I never expected to find the letter that would change everything while cleaning out Walter's study. My hands trembled as I held the yellowed envelope, postmarked 15 years ago, addressed to my dearest Lila, to be opened upon my passing. My name is Lila, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had finally found the family I'd always dreamed of. The Parkers, Walter and Elsie, had been my safe harbor after years in foster care, and their grandson Ethan became my husband. But now, with both of them gone and this letter in my hands, I realized how naive I'd been. Lila? Are you up there? Celeste's voice carried from downstairs, making me jump. I quickly tucked the letter into my back pocket. Just finishing up in the study, I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood stairs. Celeste appeared in the doorway, perfectly coiffed as always. Mother wants to know if you found the deed to the summer cottage yet. The realtor is getting impatient. I haven't come across it, I said, gesturing to the boxes around me. There's still quite a bit to go through. She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the shelves like a predator. Well, we need to get this wrapped up soon. The market won't stay hot forever. I didn't realize we were in such a rush to sell everything, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Celeste's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Mother's not getting any younger, dear. She needs to simplify her life now that Walter's gone. You understand, don't you? I nodded, but my mind was racing. Walter had always said the summer cottage would stay in the family. He'd made that clear at countless Sunday dinners. Something wasn't adding up. Oh, and what's this? Celeste picked up an ornate wooden box from Walter's desk. My heart stopped. It was the box he'd always kept locked. The one he'd mentioned in hushed conversations with Elsie when they thought no one was listening. I haven't had a chance to look through that yet, I said, reaching for it. Celeste pulled it away. No need to trouble yourself. I'll take it down to Mother. She'll know what to do with it. Actually, I think. Lila, darling, she cut me off, her tone sharp despite her smile. You've been so helpful with all this, but remember, you're not actually a Parker. Some things should stay in the family. The words hit like a slap. Before I could respond, she was already heading for the door, the box tucked under her arm. Oh, and Ethan called while you were up here, she added. He'll be late tonight, something about a client dinner. I told him not to worry, that you'd understand. I waited until her footsteps faded before pulling out Walter's letter. My hands shook as I broke the seal. My dearest Lila, if you're reading this, then both Elsie and I are gone. There are things you need to know about the cottage and the box in my study, things I couldn't tell you while I was alive. What's inside that box belongs to you, not just as my granddaughter-in-law, but as the daughter of my heart. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, no matter what they might claim. And whatever you do, don't let Celeste. The letter cut off there, the rest of the page torn away. I sank into Walter's old leather chair, my mind racing. What was in that box that was so important? And why had Walter been so worried about Celeste? I pulled out my phone to text Ethan, then stopped. If Celeste was lying about the client dinner, what else was she lying about? And more importantly, who could I really trust? One thing was certain. I needed to get that box back before Celeste could open it. The only question was how. The next morning, I found Vivian in her garden, methodically deadheading her prized roses. 6 months ago, she would have greeted me with a warm smile and an extra pair of gardening gloves. Today, she barely looked up. Have you seen the box Celeste took from Walter's study? I asked, kneeling beside her. Oh, that old thing? Vivian's scissors snipped sharply through a stem. She mentioned finding it. Probably just more paperwork to sort through. It was locked, I said carefully. Did she manage to open it? Vivian's hands stilled. Lila's dear, I know you mean well, but perhaps it's time to step back a bit. The family needs space to grieve. The family? The words felt like acid in my mouth. I thought I was family. Of course you are, through Ethan. She resumed her pruning. But Walter and Elsie? Well, blood is different, isn't it? I thought about the torn letter in my pocket, about all the Sunday afternoons Walter had spent teaching me chess in his study. They never made me feel different. They were kind people, Vivian agreed, her voice softening. But they're gone now, and things must change. Celeste is helping me put everything in order. By selling the cottage? The words burst out before I could stop them. Vivian's scissors clattered to the ground. How did you? I overheard, I said quickly. But Walter always said. Walter isn't here anymore. Celeste's voice cut through the morning air. She stood at the garden gate, holding 2 coffee cups. Mother, I brought your morning latte. I watched as Vivian's whole demeanor shifted, straightening up like a puppet on strings. Thank you, darling. You always know exactly what I need. Celeste handed her mother the coffee, then turned to me with a practiced smile. Lila, I didn't expect to see you here so early. Shouldn't you be at work? I took the morning off, I said, meeting her gaze. I wanted to talk about the box. Oh, that old thing? Celeste waved dismissively. Nothing but some dusty photographs and old receipts. I've already sorted through it. My stomach dropped. You opened it? Of course. We need to be efficient about clearing out the house. She paused, studying me. Unless there was something specific you were looking for? I thought about Walter's letter, about his warning, just wondering if there might be some family memories worth keeping. How thoughtful, Celeste said, her smile never wavering. But Mother and I have it under control. Don't we, Mother? Vivian nodded, not meeting my eyes. Yes, of course. Celeste knows best. Later that afternoon, I sat in my car outside Walter and Elsie's old house, watching Celeste's Mercedes pull out of the driveway. As soon as she was gone, I dialed Ethan's number. Hey, I've been trying to reach you, I said when he answered. Where were you last night? Client dinner, like I told Celeste to tell you. He sounded distracted. Listen, I'm heading into another meeting. Did you know they're selling the cottage? A long pause. It's complicated, Lila. Mother needs the money, and Celeste thinks. Since when does Celeste make all the decisions? She's just trying to help, Ethan said, his voice tight. Look, can we talk about this later? I really need to go. After he hung up, I sat there, feeling the weight of Walter's torn letter in my pocket. Something caught my eye, a familiar figure slipping out the back door of the house. It was Vivian, clutching something to her chest as she hurried toward her car. I squinted through the windshield. In her arms was Walter's wooden box. My phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Dinner at Mother's tonight. 7 p.m. Family meeting about the cottage. Don't be late. I stared at the message, then back at Vivian's retreating figure. Whatever was in that box, whatever Walter had tried to warn me about, I had a feeling tonight's dinner was going to change everything. And I needed to be ready. The family dinner felt like walking into a trap. Vivian's dining room, usually warm and inviting, now seemed staged, like a set where everyone had rehearsed their lines except me. The wooden box sat prominently on the sideboard, almost taunting me. I made your favorite, dear, Vivian said, setting down a casserole. Elsie's recipe. My throat tightened. You never asked for that recipe while she was alive. Celeste cleared her throat. Let's discuss the cottage. The realtor has an interested buyer. I found something interesting today. I interrupted, pulling out Walter's letter. While cleaning the study, Ethan reached for my hand under the table, but I pulled away. His silence all week had said enough. More paperwork? Celeste's smile didn't reach her eyes. I thought we'd cleared everything important. It's a letter. From Walter. I watched Vivian's hands shake as she served the food. About the box. And the cottage. The clatter of Vivian's serving spoon against the dish echoed through the room. Celeste's posture stiffened. Mother, why don't you sit? Celeste's voice was honey-sweet. You look tired. I'm fine, Vivian said, but her eyes darted between the box and me. I pressed on. Walter was very specific about the cottage staying in the family, and about certain items being protected. That letter is clearly a forgery, Celeste cut in. Mother, show her what we found in the box. Those old bank statements. Vivian didn't move. Mother, Vivian's hands twisted her napkin. I haven't actually opened it yet. Celeste's facade cracked. What do you mean? You told me. I couldn't find the key, Vivian whispered. And something Walter said before I just couldn't. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small brass key. You mean this key? The room went silent. Elsie had given it to me years ago, on my wedding day. Family treasures need proper guardians, she'd said with a wink. Where did you get that? Celeste demanded, standing up. Sit down, cellist. Ethan's voice surprised us all. Let's hear what's in the letter. Oh, now you want to hear things? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Where was this interest when your sister was? A loud crash interrupted me. We all turned to see Vivian clutching the edge of the sideboard, the box lying open at her feet. Papers and photographs scattered across the floor. But it was the small leather journal that caught my eye. As I bent to pick it up, Celeste lunged forward. "Don't touch that." Too late. The journal fell open, and several bank statements fluttered out. Recent ones, with Celeste's name on them, and transactions that made my blood run cold. "You've been stealing from her," I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. "That's why you want to sell the cottage. You need to cover your tracks." Celeste. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "What is she talking about?" "Mother, I can explain." "The money from father's life insurance," Vivian said, realization dawning on her face. "The investments you said you were managing for me. Everything I did was for this family." Celeste's composure shattered. "While you were all playing happy families with your precious Lila, I was trying to keep us afloat. By stealing." Ethan stood up, his face hard. "By selling our grandfather's cottage? Your grandfather?" Celeste laughed bitterly. "He wasn't even your real grandfather. Just like she's not really family." The room spun. I grabbed Walter's letter, my anchor in this storm. He was more real than you'll ever understand. I turned to leave, but Vivian's voice stopped me. "Wait." She picked up something from the scattered papers, a sealed envelope with my name on it. "There's more." Celeste moved to intercept it, but Ethan blocked her path. "Enough, Celeste. It's over." I took the envelope with trembling hands, feeling its weight, and the weight of all our fractured bonds, as police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called them, and nothing would ever be the same. The police questioning lasted 3 hours. I sat in our living room afterward, Walter's second letter still unopened in my lap, while Ethan paced by the window. "They're charging her with fraud," he said finally. "Multiple counts." I traced the edge of the envelope. "Are you okay?" "My sister's going to jail, my mother's savings are gone, and our family's falling apart." He stopped pacing. "What do you think?" The bitterness in his voice made me flinch. "I didn't want any of this. Didn't you?" He turned to face me. "You could have shown me the first letter privately. Instead, you turned dinner into a spectacle. Like you turned our marriage into a spectacle?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "All those client dinners that Celeste kept covering for." "Don't." His face darkened. "That's not fair. Neither is lying to your wife." A knock at the door interrupted us. Through the window, I saw Vivian standing on our porch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Ethan opened the door. "Mother, you should be resting. I need to speak with Lila." Her voice was hoarse. "Alone." Ethan hesitated, then grabbed his keys. "I'll get some groceries." After he left, Vivian sat across from me, her hands clutching her purse. The detective showed me everything. The transfers, the forged signatures. She swallowed hard. "She's been stealing from me for years." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "No, I'm sorry." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I chose to believe her lies about you because they were easier than facing the truth about her." She pulled something from her purse, a faded photograph. "Do you know what this is?" I leaned forward. The picture showed Walter and Elsie standing in front of the cottage, arms around a teenage girl I didn't recognize. "That's Celeste's mother," Vivian said quietly. "Walter's first wife." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" "She died when Celeste was young. Walter never got over it. When he married me years later, Celeste was already grown, but she never forgave him for moving on." Vivian's hands trembled. "Or for loving you the way he couldn't love her." I thought about Celeste's bitterness, her desperate need for control. The cottage was meant for her originally, but she rejected it, and Walter, when he remarried. He changed his will after your wedding, leaving it to you and Ethan instead. Vivian met my eyes. "That's what's in that second letter you're holding. The legal transfer." My fingers tightened around the envelope. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand." She stood up shakily. "And because I need your help." The detective found evidence that Celeste has been moving money offshore. If we don't act quickly, everything will be gone. Everything. The cottage. The family savings. Your inheritance. She took a deep breath. I know I have no right to ask, but you're the only one who can stop her now. You have the legal authority through Walter's will. I stared at the unopened letter. Does Ethan know about this? No one does. Exceptionalist. Vivian moved toward the door. She's being released on bail tomorrow morning. Whatever you're going to do, it needs to be before then. After she left, I finally opened the second letter. Inside was exactly what Vivian had described: legal documents transferring ownership of the cottage and a significant trust to me, along with a handwritten note. My dearest Lila, some treasures are meant to be protected, not possessed. Choose wisely. Walter. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Smart girl, finding those bank statements. But you're not the only one with secrets. Ask your husband about April 15th. See. I heard Ethan's key in the lock and quickly slipped the phone into my pocket. As he walked in with groceries, I watched him carefully, wondering what other revelations this night would bring, and whether our marriage would survive them. I spent the night digging through old bank records, trying to piece together what happened on April 15th. Around dawn, my phone lit up with a text from Mason, Ethan's childhood friend who now worked at the bank. Found something. Meet me at Parker's Cafe. Come alone. The irony of the location wasn't lost on me. Walter used to take me there every Sunday after chess lessons. Now it was just another reminder of what I'd lost. Mason was already waiting in a corner booth, looking nervous. You shouldn't have told the police about the offshore accounts. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. How did you? Because I helped set them up. He slid a folder across the table. Ethan asked me to. The world tilted sideways. What? April 15th. Mason wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan came to me about moving some money. Said it was for Celeste, to help with mother's care. I didn't ask questions, we've been friends since kindergarten. My hands shook as I opened the folder. There they were, transfer records with Ethan's signature, dating back months before Walter's death. Why are you showing me this? Because Celeste was at the bank this morning. Mason lowered his voice. She's trying to empty the accounts before the freeze takes effect. All of them, including yours. She can't access my accounts. She can with power of attorney. He tapped the folder. Signed by Ethan last month. The cafe's morning chatter faded to white noise. I thought about Ethan's late nights, his defensive behavior, the way he'd avoided my questions about Celeste. My phone buzzed. Another text from Celeste. Tick-tock. The bank opens in an hour. I have to go. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee. Lila, wait. Mason grabbed my arm. There's more. The cottage, it's already sold. The paperwork went through yesterday. That's impossible. I have Walter's letter, dated after the sale was finalized. He released my arm. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I drove to the cottage on autopilot, Walter's words echoing in my head. Some treasures are meant to be protected, not possessed. The front door was unlocked. Inside, Vivian sat at the kitchen table, staring at an empty teacup. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. I thought I was protecting him. Her voice was hollow. My son. My daughter. My family. By letting Celeste steal everything? By keeping the peace. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. But peace built on lies isn't peace at all, is it? My phone buzzed again. Ethan, where are you? We need to talk. He's not who you think he is, Vivian said quietly. Neither of them are. And who am I? I asked, Walter's second letter burning a hole in my pocket. The orphan who married into the wrong family? No. Vivian stood up, suddenly looking more like the strong woman I'd first met. You're the daughter Walter chose. The one who saw through our lies. She pulled out a key, old brass, different from the one I had. There's a safe in his study, behind the chessboard. Why are you helping me now? Because you were right about one thing. She pressed the key into my hand. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And I'm choosing to make things right. My phone lit up one last time. Celeste, too late, little sister. Check the news. As if on cue, Vivian's phone started ringing. She answered, listened, then went pale. The police just arrested Ethan, she whispered. For conspiracy and fraud. I clutched the key, feeling its weight, the weight of choices, of betrayals, of everything Walter had tried to protect me from. "What's in the safe?" I asked. "The truth." Vivian grabbed her car keys. "But we have to hurry. Celeste will be looking for it too." As we drove back to Walter's house, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, not just for Walter's memory, but for all of us who'd been caught in this web of lies. And maybe, just maybe, about finding out who I really was in the process. Walter's study looked exactly as he'd left it, chess pieces frozen mid-game on the board. Vivian and I had barely made it inside when we heard the front door open downstairs. "Up here." Celeste's voice rang out. I saw their cars. Vivian's hands shook as she helped me move the chessboard. "We don't have much time." The safe was small, built into the wall. As I inserted the key, footsteps echoed up the stairs. "Looking for this?" Celeste appeared in the doorway, holding up a familiar envelope. The real second letter from Walter. The one that proves everything you think you know is wrong. My key wouldn't turn. "That's impossible. I have the letter right here. You have what I wanted you to have." She stepped into the room, Mason following behind her. My stomach dropped. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mason." "I'm sorry, Lila." He looked genuinely pained. "She has proof that could ruin my career." I had to tell her about our meeting. Celeste smiled. "Family's complicated, isn't it? Just ask your husband." "Oh wait, you can't. He's in jail because of you." "Because of me?" I turned to Vivian. "Tell her." But Vivian was gone, the study door closing behind her with a soft click. "Mother knows when to cut her losses," Celeste said. "Unlike you." She held up her phone, showing me a document. "Want to know what April 15th really means? It's the day Walter changed his will after I showed him proof that you were stealing from him." "That's a lie." "Is it?" She nodded to Mason, who pulled out more papers. Bank statements, transfer records, all with my signature. All forged, but who would believe me now? "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why go through all this?" "Because you took what was mine." The facade cracked, real pain bleeding through. This house, the cottage, Walter's love. It was supposed to be mine. I was his family first. The safe's lock finally clicked. Inside was a single photograph. Celeste as a child, with Walter and her mother. On the back, in Walter's handwriting, "The daughter of my heart, always." "He never stopped loving you," I whispered. "Don't." She snatched the photo away. "You don't get to pretend you understand." "But I do." I thought about the torn letter, about all the pieces finally falling into place. "That's why you had to destroy everything." "Because he loved both of us." Celeste's laugh was bitter. "And look where his love got us. You'll lose everything, the house, the inheritance, even Ethan. The police already have evidence of your fraud." Mason made sure of that. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Check your email." "It's over, Lila." Celeste moved toward the door. "By tomorrow, you'll be joining your husband in jail." A fitting end for the orphan who tried to steal my family. After they left, I opened my email with trembling hands. There was a single video file from Vivian's security footage from Walter's study, dated April 15th. In it, Celeste and Ethan argued about forged documents, about framing me, about everything. But it was too late. The evidence against me was already with the police. Ethan was in jail. The cottage was sold. And I was alone in Walter's study, surrounded by the ghosts of two families I'd lost. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Ethan. "Whatever happens, remember the chessboard. Last game, last move. I'm sorry for everything." I looked at the frozen game on Walter's board. The white queen was one move from checkmate, but it wasn't the right piece. This wasn't how Walter played. With shaking hands, I lifted the queen. Underneath was a small USB drive. My phone lit up one last time. "Vivian, the game isn't over until all the pieces are in play. Meet me at the police station. Bring the drive." I stared at the chessboard, at the careful setup that had been waiting all this time. Walter's final game, his final lesson about family and justice and the choices we make. The question was, did I have the courage to make the right move? The police station buzzed with fluorescent-lit tension as I walked in, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. Vivian sat in the waiting area, her usual perfect posture crumpled. "She's in there now," Vivian said, nodding toward an interview room. "Trying to finalize the charges against you." Through the window, I could see Celeste talking to two detectives, her hands moving in confident gestures. The perfect performance, as always. "Did you watch what's on the drive?" Vivian asked. I shook my head. Some games you can't take back once you start them. The interview room door opened. Celeste stepped out, freezing when she saw me. For a moment, her mask slipped, showing real fear. "What are you doing here?" "Finishing the game." I held up the USB drive. The one Walter started. She recovered quickly, smile sliding back into place. "More desperate tricks?" "The police already have their evidence." "Do they?" I turned to the detectives. "Did she tell you about the real April 15th meeting? The one where she and Ethan discussed framing me?" "They don't need to hear your lies," Celeste snapped, but her voice wavered. I plugged the drive into a nearby computer. The screen filled with Walter's face, a video diary entry. "If you're watching this," he began, "then the worst has happened. Celeste has chosen revenge over family. Again." Celeste lunged for the computer, but Vivian caught her arm. "No more running, daughter. No more lies." The video continued, showing Walter's detailed records of Celeste's schemes, the forged documents, the offshore accounts, the systematic destruction of evidence. But it was the last clip that made Celeste sink into a chair, security footage of her threatening Ethan, forcing him to choose between protecting me or watching his mother lose everything. "Turn it off," Celeste whispered. "He knew," I said softly. "Walter knew everything. But he still kept that photo of you. Still loved you until the end." "Stop it. He didn't choose me over you, Celeste. He chose to protect both of us from yourself. You don't understand." She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "He left. When my mother died, he just moved on. Found a new family, a new daughter. Like we meant nothing." "No," Vivian stepped forward. "He tried to help you heal. But you wouldn't let him." The detectives moved in, but I held up my hand. "Wait, there's one more thing." I pulled out the photograph from the safe. "He kept this all these years, Celeste. On the back, read what he wrote." Her hands shook as she turned the photo over. "The daughter of my heart, always." And below it, "Remember, love multiplies, it doesn't divide." The fight seemed to drain out of her. When the detectives stepped forward again, she didn't resist. "The charges against your husband will be dropped," one detective told me. "We'll need statements from both of you." As they led Celeste away, she stopped. "Why didn't you just destroy me when you had the chance?" "It's what I would have done." "Because that's the difference between us," I said. "I wanted justice. You wanted revenge. Walter taught me there's a difference." After she was gone, Vivian touched my arm. "Walter would be proud. But what about Ethan? Can you forgive him?" I thought about the chessboard, about Ethan's desperate move to protect both his sister and his wife, about choices and consequences and the complexity of love. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I think Walter left us one last lesson about family, that sometimes the hardest moves are the ones that hurt the most, but lead to the right ending." My phone buzzed, a text from the prison. Ethan was being released. Another choice waiting to be made. "Some games don't end with checkmate," I said, more to myself than Vivian. "Sometimes they end with understanding why the pieces moved the way they did." I headed for the door, ready to face whatever came next. Behind me, Vivian's voice was soft but clear. "That, my dear, is exactly what Walter was trying to teach us all along." 1 year later, I stood in the cottage's renovated kitchen, watching autumn leaves dance across the lawn where Walter and Elsie used to host family picnics. My daughter Ivy slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby, her tiny hands clutching the chess piece that had changed everything, the White Queen. The sound of gravel crunching outside announced Vivian's arrival. She'd been visiting weekly since Ivy's birth, slowly rebuilding what Celeste had tried to destroy. "The garden's coming along beautifully," she said, setting down a familiar wooden box on the counter. "Walter would have loved it." I touched the box gently. "You found it in Celeste's storage unit." The police finally released her personal items. She hesitated. "She's asking to see you." The old anger flickered, then faded. "Not yet." Vivian nodded, understanding in her eyes. We'd all learned that healing had its own timeline. Even Ethan, who now lived in the city and visited Ivy on weekends, was still finding his way back. There's something else, Vivian said, opening the box. Inside lay a stack of letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Celeste in Walter's handwriting. He wrote to her every week after she cut him off. Never sent them. Did you read them? Just one. She pulled out a letter dated the week before his death. I think you should see it. Before I could respond, footsteps sounded on the porch. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking uncertain despite our standing arrangement. I can come back. No, I said, surprising myself. Stay. He moved to Ivy's bassinet, his face softening as he watched her sleep. Some wounds healed slower than others, but they did heal. I'll leave you to it, Vivian said, heading for the door. She paused. Oh, and Lila? Thank you for not selling the cottage. Some treasures really are meant to be protected. After she left, I opened Walter's last letter, Ethan reading over my shoulder. My dearest Celeste, by now, Lila will have found the truth. Not just about the money or the cottage, but about family, how it bends but doesn't break, how it forgives but doesn't forget. I chose her not to replace you, but to remind me that love grows even in the hardest soil. The chess set you loved as a child sits in my study, waiting for the day you'll teach your own children that every piece matters, even the ones we think we can sacrifice. The game isn't about winning, it's about understanding why we play. I hope someday you'll understand that too. With endless love, Walter. Ivy stirred, her small sounds filling the quiet room. Ethan reached for her, then stopped, looking at me for permission. She has your eyes, I said softly. And Walter's chess piece. He liked that. I folded the letter carefully. She'll need to learn the game someday. Will you teach her? The question hung between us, heavy with meaning. Outside, the autumn wind stirred the leaves again, nature's endless cycle of endings and beginnings. We both will, I decided. She should know all the stories, the hard ones and the healing ones. Ethan nodded, emotion crossing his face. And Celeste. I thought about Walter's words, about love growing in hard soil, about games that never really end, just change shape. Eventually, I said, when we're ready. Later that evening, I sat in Walter's old chair, watching Ivy sleep. The wooden box sat open beside me, full of undelivered love letters and complicated truths. On the wall hung 2 photographs, Walter with young Celeste, and Walter with me at my wedding. Different pieces of the same game. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. She's beautiful. Thank you for the picture Vivian sent. See, I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Some moves take time to play out. In the distance, a chessboard waited, its pieces arranged in eternal possibility. Ready for the next game, the next lesson, the next chance to understand what family really means. And this time we'd all play it differently.
As the Philadelphia sky was turning dusk, Caroline Morrison hurried out of the University Hospital's pharmacy department. It had been another busy day. She took her cell phone out of her white coat pocket and checked the time. There was a message from her husband Patrick, "I'll be a little late today. The research is at a critical stage. Love you." Caroline smiled and headed toward the hospital parking lot while typing her reply. In the 8 years since meeting Patrick Hamilton, her life had changed dramatically. Raised in a middle-class family from a small town, she had graduated from pharmacy school on a scholarship and now worked as a trusted pharmacist at the university hospital. Caroline was content with her life. Meeting Patrick had been fate. Working as a researcher at a major pharmaceutical company, he had been a speaker at a conference Caroline attended. The two were bound by their passion for science, and above all, their sincerity. Patrick, with his gentle personality and sharp intellect, was the perfect partner for Caroline. If there was one shadow over her life, it would be the presence of her mother-in-law, Martha. As Caroline got into her car and started the engine, her phone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw Martha's name displayed. After a moment's hesitation, she took a deep breath and answered the phone. "Hello, Martha." "Caroline," a cold voice replied. "I'm calling about Rebecca's wedding. I wonder if you could not come to the rehearsal dinner the day after tomorrow." I'd like to keep it just family. Here we go again, Caroline thought. Patrick's sister Rebecca's wedding was next week. From the beginning of preparations, Caroline had been thoroughly excluded. But what about Patrick? I'll explain to my son myself. You're busy, aren't you? With your hospital work. Martha's voice was laced with sarcasm. Caroline suppressed the urge to retort and simply answered, I understand. After hanging up, she gripped the steering wheel tightly. Martha came from a prominent Philadelphia family and was a pillar of high society. She had strongly opposed her son's marriage and still looked down on Caroline as an upstart. Patrick's sister Rebecca also took a similar attitude, treating Caroline with contempt. She had suffered humiliating treatment from both of them numerous times but had endured it for her love for Patrick. Patrick himself would occasionally reprimand his mother and sister for their behavior, but he optimistically believed that they'll understand eventually. When Caroline arrived at the apartment, she found a wedding invitation on the table. It featured a glamorous photo of Rebecca and Thomas Bradshaw, the son of another prominent family. Turning it over, she noticed a sticky note. In Patrick's handwriting, Mom came to deliver this in person. She asked about you, but I told her you were at work. Love you. She sighed. This was her reality. The unwanted wife of the Hamilton family. But recently, Caroline had been sensing something odd about her mother-in-law's behavior. As a pharmacist, she had found Martha's recent purchases of certain herbs and chemicals concerning. The other day, when she happened to glimpse the contents of Martha's shopping bag, her professional instincts had rung alarm bells. Caroline picked up the invitation and stared at the wedding date. A feeling that something might happen occupied her mind. The next day, Caroline approached her friend Michael Waiter, who worked at the hospital. He was Patrick's college friend and now worked in the hospital cafeteria. Michael, I have a favor to ask, she said softly after checking that no one was around. You're working as a waiter at Rebecca's wedding, right? Michael nodded. Yes, Martha hired me. Is something wrong? I just have a feeling that I should be careful about my drinks, Caroline said with a serious expression. If possible, could you replace just my glass with a different one? Without anyone noticing. Michael looked surprised but quickly became serious. Got it. I'll keep an eye out. Do you really think something's going on? It's just intuition, she shrugged. Maybe it's my pharmacist's instinct. Michael gently squeezed Caroline's hand. Leave it to me. Patrick is a dear friend, and I respect you too. I'll help if anything happens. Thank you, Caroline returned a grateful smile. On the wedding day, Caroline was tense from the morning. She adjusted the pleats of her dress and checked her hairstyle repeatedly in the mirror. Patrick embraced her from behind. You look beautiful, he kissed her cheek. Let's enjoy today. It's an important day for Rebecca. Caroline smiled, but anxiety was swirling inside her. Yes, of course. They arrived at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, the most prestigious in Philadelphia. The hotel lobby was adorned with sophisticated decorations, with people from high society coming and going. When Patrick got out of the car and opened her door, Caroline took a deep breath. Ready? Patrick extended his hand gently. Caroline nodded and took his hand. Let's go. In the hotel's entrance hall, many guests had already gathered. People in expensive dresses and tuxedos were enjoying conversation with champagne glasses in hand. When Caroline and Patrick entered, all eyes momentarily turned to them. Whispers could be heard. She straightened her back and tried to walk with dignity. At the reception, a young female staff member smiled modestly. Your names, please. Patrick and Caroline Hamilton, Patrick answered. The staff checked the list and looked slightly confused. Yes. Here it is. She pointed at the venue map. Your seats are here. Caroline frowned at the indicated location. It was the furthest corner, the seat most distant from the main table. Is there some mistake? Caroline quietly asked. Patrick is the bride's brother. The staff answered with an apologetic expression. These are Mrs. Hamilton's instructions. She specifically requested this arrangement. Anger flashed across Patrick's face, but he quickly suppressed it. I understand. It's my sister's wedding, so I don't want to cause any problems, he said quietly to Caroline. Can you bear with it? Caroline looked into her husband's eyes and smiled. For you. As they entered the venue, mother-in-law Martha approached, dressed in a luxurious silk dress with a cold smile. Caroline, I see you managed to dress properly today. Her sarcastic gaze looked Caroline's dress up and down. It has a common taste, but I suppose you did your best for today. Patrick was about to speak, but Caroline gently squeezed his arm. Thank you. It looks like it will be a lovely ceremony, she responded calmly. Martha laughed lightly through her nose and said, Yes, a ceremony worthy of the Hamilton family tradition, then turned to Patrick. The main table will seat Rebecca's friends, so your seats are separate. Please understand. Patrick frowned. I'm her brother. Family usually sits at the main table. Today is a special day. Please respect Rebecca's wishes, Martha said firmly before leaving to greet other guests. Caroline and Patrick headed to their assigned seats. Several guests were already seated at the table. They appeared to be distant relatives or mere social acquaintances. Just as Caroline was about to sit down, Martha returned. You should be grateful I arranged a seat for you at all, she said loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. Originally, these were supposed to be family-only seats. Giggles could be heard from around the table. Caroline felt her cheeks burning but maintained her composure and sat down gracefully. Patrick's face reddened with anger, and he was about to say something to his mother when music signaled the beginning of the ceremony. The wedding was conducted solemnly. Rebecca entered in a pure white dress, looking proud. Thomas Bradshaw greeted his bride with gentlemanly poise. As Caroline watched the ceremony, she occasionally noticed triumphant glances directed at her from her mother-in-law and Rebecca. After the vows were exchanged and the newlyweds exited, the reception began. Staff circulated, distributing champagne for a toast. Michael was not yet visible, but Caroline trusted him. A young waiter approached Caroline and Patrick's table and began distributing champagne glasses. The moment a glass was placed in front of Caroline, she sensed something off. With her trained pharmacist's sense of smell, she noticed a subtle scent different from normal champagne. Looking closely at the glass, she noticed a nearly imperceptible difference in color. She gently set the glass down, hesitating to drink. Patrick noticed and asked, "What's wrong?" The scent seems strange. Caroline began, but Patrick sighed. You're overthinking again. You worry too much about my mother, he said gently. Look, there's nothing wrong. And with that, Patrick picked up Caroline's glass and took a sip. At that moment, mother-in-law Martha's face drained of color from across the table. She jumped up from her chair and exclaimed, "Wait, don't drink that." The attention of the entire venue turned to Martha. Patrick looked at his mother with a puzzled expression and asked, "What's wrong?" "That's, well." Martha stammered, unable to hide her panic. Patrick looked at the glass after taking a sip and casually said, "Delicious champagne." Martha froze with wide eyes, and nearby Rebecca also stared with a shocked expression. Why isn't anything happening?" the mother-in-law muttered, her face showing anxiety and confusion. Caroline calmly observed their reactions while secretly transferring a wine sample to a small vial. The atmosphere in the venue froze momentarily, but as Patrick continued to act normally, it gradually returned to its original mood. As the wedding ambience lingered in the venue, Caroline continued her quiet observation. Martha and Rebecca were whispering to each other, occasionally glancing anxiously at Caroline. Patrick acted as if nothing had happened, chatting with relatives and friends. Caroline took out a small hand mirror from her bag, pretending to check her appearance while secretly examining the small vial containing the champagne sample she had collected. It looked like ordinary transparent liquid, but her professional instinct told her something was off. "What are you thinking about?" Patrick sat next to her and put his arm around her shoulder. "Don't worry about my mother. She's always dramatic." Caroline smiled. "I'm fine. Just a little tired." Patrick held her hand and promised, "Just hang in there a little longer. We'll leave early when the ceremony is over." The reception proceeded as planned, and while Caroline maintained an outward calm, she kept a close eye on her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Their anxiety and agitation clearly indicated that something hadn't gone according to plan. As the night wore on and the party approached its climax, Michael, working as a hotel waiter, approached Caroline. After ensuring no one was around, he said in a low voice, "I did as you asked. I switched only your glass with a different one," he continued, pretending to serve dessert. "Before I entered the venue, I saw Rebecca checking your seat and doing something to your glass." Caroline's eyes widened. "Really?" Michael nodded briefly. "Be careful. Let me know if you need anything." "Thank you," Caroline returned a grateful smile. "I don't need anything more. I've already obtained the evidence." Michael looked slightly surprised but left to serve other tables. As the night progressed and many guests began to leave, Caroline and Patrick also prepared to depart. Martha and Rebecca didn't approach them, rather, they seemed to be deliberately keeping their distance. In the hotel's luxurious lobby, Patrick tried to say goodbye to his mother and sister, but Caroline told him, "We need to talk properly tomorrow. I'm tired tonight." When they got home, Patrick sank into the sofa and asked, "How was today?" "Mom and Rebecca's attitude was terrible, but I thought the ceremony itself was wonderful." Caroline sat next to him and took a deep breath. "Patrick, we need to talk about your champagne." "Oh, that," he laughed lightly. "I was surprised when Mom suddenly shouted not to drink it, but nothing happened, right?" "That's not true," Caroline said with a serious expression. "I want to have it tested at the hospital tomorrow. I think there was something wrong with that champagne." Patrick frowned. "You don't think Mom would?" He faltered. "I can't believe that. Why would you think she'd put something in your glass?" "Intuition," Caroline said quietly. "We'll know the truth tomorrow." The next morning, Caroline woke up early and headed to the hospital's laboratory. Her friend, lab technician Jennifer, was waiting. "Good morning, Caroline," Jennifer greeted cheerfully, but her smile faded when she saw Caroline's serious expression. "What's wrong?" Caroline took the small vial from her bag. "Could you analyze this? Not just a regular alcohol test, but a toxin screening." Jennifer looked surprised but, as a professional, took the vial without questions. "Urgent?" "As soon as possible," Caroline nodded. A few hours later, Jennifer called Caroline to the lab with a grave face. "Look at this," she pointed to the computer screen. "This isn't ordinary champagne. Traces of atropine were detected. It's a small amount, but dangerous enough." Caroline clutched the data with trembling hands. "This wasn't accidental, it was intentional. Shouldn't you report this to the police?" Jennifer asked worriedly. Caroline thought deeply. "Not yet. I need to talk to Patrick first." That evening, when Patrick returned home, Caroline had spread the test results on the dining table. Seeing his wife's serious expression, he immediately understood. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Caroline showed him the test results and explained. The champagne was laced with atropine. In proper doses, it's used as medicine, but in excessive amounts, it's a toxin that can cause severe symptoms like increased heart rate, fever, hallucinations, and in the worst case, death. Patrick initially couldn't believe it, but his face changed color when he saw the evidence. He collapsed into a chair. No way. Mother. Actually, I suspected something might happen before the ceremony, Caroline confessed. I had noticed your mother buying certain herbs and chemicals recently, and her eyes were filled with more hostility than before when looking at me. So as a precaution, I asked Michael, who works with me at the hospital, to switch just my glass with a different one. Patrick was visibly shaken, showing an expression of anger toward his mother and surprise at his wife's quick thinking. I can't believe Mother would go that far, he muttered in disbelief. But why didn't anything happen when I drank it? The amount was small, Caroline explained. You only took one sip, right? It was probably calculated to be sufficient if I emptied the glass. Also, with your build, a small amount might not have shown noticeable symptoms. Anger colored Patrick's face. Why would Mother do such a thing? He clenched his fist. Was Rebecca involved too? Judging by their reactions, there's no doubt, Caroline sighed. They were both expecting me to collapse. They probably intended to humiliate me in the middle of the wedding. This is unacceptable, Patrick stood up and paced the room. I should confront my mother and sister about the truth. This is different from their usual harassment. This is a crime, he trembled with anger. Caroline calmly said, we should bring the evidence. Otherwise, they'll deny it, and carefully filed the test results. Let's visit Martha's mansion tomorrow. Not in the evening, but first thing in the morning. It's important not to give them time to prepare. Patrick was surprised by his wife's calmness. I'm amazed you're not angry. If it were me. For a long time, I've tried to be accepted by your family, Caroline said quietly. But after this incident, I've realized that's impossible. What matters is you and me, and our future. Patrick returned to his wife's side and embraced her tightly. I'm sorry that this happened. I can't forgive what my mother and sister did. I'll make sure they take responsibility. Don't let anger cloud your judgment, Caroline touched his cheek. Let's handle this calmly. That night, Patrick couldn't sleep. He was tormented by his inability to understand why his mother and sister hated his wife so much. He got up several times to stare out the window, occasionally sighing. Meanwhile, Caroline lay quietly, preparing mentally for tomorrow's confrontation. The time had come for years of humiliation to be cleared away, and she quietly strengthened her resolve. Her eyes remained open in the darkness, awaiting tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, let's end it all, she whispered, holding Patrick's hand. The next morning, Caroline and Patrick stood in front of Martha's house. Patrick's face was tense with nervousness, but Caroline was somehow calm. Ready? Patrick squeezed his wife's hand. Yes, Caroline nodded. In her hand was a file containing the sample's test results. When Patrick rang the doorbell, the butler James answered. He looked a bit surprised to see them but quickly regained his composure. Master Patrick, Madam Caroline. Martha is still at breakfast, but... We've come to see my mother, James, Patrick said firmly. It's urgent. The butler led them to the reception room. Surrounded by heavy antique furniture, the room told the story of the Hamilton family's wealth and tradition spanning generations. Portraits of family ancestors hung on the walls, and Caroline once again felt that she would forever be an alien presence in this lineage. After a while, Martha appeared in a silk morning gown. She flinched momentarily upon seeing her son and daughter-in-law but quickly composed herself. What brings you here so early in the morning? Rebecca's wedding was wonderful, wasn't it? She said, feigning calmness. Patrick looked at his mother with stern eyes and said in an unusually cold tone, what did you put in Caroline's glass? Martha couldn't hide her agitation, momentarily opening and closing her mouth before recovering. "What are you talking about? That's absurd. Stop the act." Patrick's voice was filled with anger. "We know." Caroline quietly opened the file and took out the test results. "This is the substance detected in the champagne. A toxin called atropine was mixed in. Although not a lethal dose, it was a dangerous amount." Martha's face drained of color, and she was at a loss for words. As tense silence filled the room, the door suddenly opened, and Rebecca entered. She was already properly dressed and seemed to have sensed something. "What's going on?" Rebecca asked nervously, reading the atmosphere of the room. "You should know." Patrick looked accusingly at his sister. "We're talking about what happened at yesterday's wedding. About putting poison in Caroline's champagne glass." Rebecca turned pale and looked at her mother. Martha collapsed onto the sofa and suddenly changed her attitude. "Ever since you entered the Hamilton family, everything started going wrong." She raised her voice and pointed at Caroline. "Patrick was supposed to marry a daughter from a more prestigious family. Not someone like you, a druggist's daughter." "Mother." Patrick's voice trembled with anger. "Caroline is an excellent pharmacist. Regardless of her background, you should respect the wife I chose." "You don't understand," Martha said bitterly. "The Hamilton family bloodline, our tradition, your children will have half of their blood from the lower class. Are you okay with that?" While maintaining her composure, Caroline asked, "Why did you want to exclude me so badly? It's not just about class consciousness, is it?" Martha hesitated for a moment, then looked at Rebecca. Rebecca gave a small nod, and Martha continued, "Rebecca has a wonderful friend. Elizabeth from the Brown family. She comes from a good family, is well educated, and suitable for our social circle. She would be perfect for Patrick. If only you weren't here." "Wait," Patrick was shocked. "Mother, you were trying to." "We intended to have you remarry," Rebecca spoke up. With a resigned expression, she said, "Mother, that's enough." She turned to Caroline and Patrick and confessed in a trembling voice, "The plan was a joint effort between Mother and me. But we never expected Patrick would drink it. We thought if Caroline were gone, Patrick would be happy with Elizabeth. But..." Patrick was stunned by his sister's confession, "Even you." He was dumbfounded. "You both really," to Caroline. He faltered. Caroline calmly asked Rebecca, "Aren't you wondering why nothing happened to Patrick?" Rebecca nodded with a confused expression. "The atropine, surely. The drug dose was probably calculated based on my body weight," Caroline said quietly. "Patrick has a bigger build, and he only took one sip. Also, I am a pharmacist. The profession you've looked down on ultimately saved me," Caroline spoke quietly. "I noticed something was off by the scent of the glass. I had sensed something strange about my mother-in-law's behavior before the ceremony and had arranged to have only my drink replaced." Martha and Rebecca were stunned. "You mean?" "Yes, I asked Michael to replace only my glass with a different one," Caroline explained matter-of-factly. "And though my husband inadvertently drank from it, fortunately, there were no serious effects." Patrick gave his mother and sister a cold look. "I will never forget this. That you tried to kill my wife. I'm cutting ties with you." "Patrick." Martha raised her voice. "You are my son. Shouldn't you choose your family?" "Family?" Patrick laughed bitterly. "Family is about cherishing and respecting each other. Caroline is my family." Rebecca broke down crying, "We were just thinking of your best interests." "Be quiet," Patrick interrupted his sister. "Don't talk about my best interests. This is completely wrong. It's a crime punishable by law." Caroline placed her hand on Patrick's arm. "We won't report this to the police. If the media finds out, it would damage your reputation too." She looked at Martha and Rebecca. But never appear before us again. And if you ever try to interfere with us in any way, this sample and test results will be submitted to the police. Martha cried while pleading with her son, Patrick, please, reconsider. Goodbye, Mother, Patrick said coldly, taking Caroline's hand and standing up. We probably won't meet again. As they were about to leave the room, Rebecca called out, Caroline, why aren't you reporting us? Caroline turned back and quietly answered, no matter what you think, I love Patrick. I don't want to damage his family's honor. And, the chain of hatred must end somewhere. That's what I believe. Patrick and Caroline left Martha's mansion. As they exited the front door, the spring sunshine enveloped them. Caroline took a deep breath, filling her lungs with fresh air. Are you sure you don't want to go to the police? Patrick asked. I'm sure, Caroline smiled. Now we can finally move forward. It's a new beginning, just for the two of us. Martha and Rebecca collapsed into their chairs, staring at each other wordlessly. 1 year later, in a colonial-style house in the Philadelphia suburbs. Morning sunlight streamed into the spacious kitchen. Caroline was brewing coffee while gazing out the window. In the backyard, spring flowers were in full bloom, and a small vegetable garden was beginning to sprout. Patrick embraced her from behind. Good morning. Caroline smiled in her husband's arms. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Yes, Patrick nodded. Thanks to you. After their confrontation with Martha and Rebecca, the couple had started a new life. Patrick had completely severed his relationship with Martha and was immersed in research at a new pharmaceutical company. Caroline continued her work at the hospital, and the two were living peaceful days. The incident had deepened their bond and made their trust in each other unshakable. What are your plans for today? Patrick asked, picking up a coffee cup. I have a checkup at the hospital this afternoon, Caroline answered happily. Patrick gently placed his hand on his wife's stomach. Though barely noticeable yet, a new life was growing there. Already 3 months. It still doesn't feel real. They had learned of Caroline's pregnancy 3 weeks ago. When she told him, we're having a baby, Patrick, he embraced his wife with a joy-filled expression. How happy I am to be able to start a family with you. Meanwhile, in society circles, Martha and Rebecca's reputation had plummeted. When Rebecca's fiancé Thomas learned of the events after the wedding, he broke off the engagement, and she disappeared from society. Martha was left alone in her mansion, living a lonely life in stark contrast to her once glamorous lifestyle. After breakfast, Patrick brought in the mail. From Mother again, he sighed, showing an envelope. Martha sent letters every week, but all were returned unopened. Maybe someday there will come a time when we read them, Caroline said quietly. But not now. Patrick nodded and set the envelope aside. That night, as they relaxed on the sofa discussing future plans, the phone rang. When Patrick answered, it was from the hospital. Martha had been admitted in critical condition. What should we do? Patrick asked Caroline after hanging up. Should I visit my mother? Caroline took her husband's hand. I'll support your decision. Whatever you choose, I'm by your side. After a long silence, Patrick made up his mind. Let's go. Just to visit. I'm not saying we're reconciling. When they met Martha at the hospital, they were shocked by the aged woman's appearance. She had deteriorated so much in just 1 year. Martha wept when she saw them. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to see you once, she said weakly. Patrick's expression was complex, but Caroline quietly said, I've let the past go. But it will take time to rebuild trust. Martha smiled resignedly and said, be happy with your new life. On their way home, Caroline said, let's teach our child love, not hatred. Patrick looked at his wife and replied, your kindness saves me." 2 weeks later, they learned they were having a girl. They decided to name her Hope, meaning second chance. "Let's end the chain of malice with us." Caroline's words illuminated their new future like the spring sunshine. Evelyn Winston gazed down at the twilight city from her office in a Manhattan high-rise. She unconsciously checked her reflection in the window glass, a perfectly tailored black pantsuit, neatly arranged chestnut hair, and eyes that couldn't hide their fatigue. "The presentation materials are perfect." "The client was absolutely thrilled," Jessica said with a smile as Evelyn turned around to face her colleague. Evelyn smiled back, but her expression seemed somewhat vacant. "Thank you. But I'll be leaving now. I have to attend my sister's baby shower." After leaving the office and settling into her luxury car, Evelyn heaved a deep sigh. Her professional success meant nothing to her family, especially to her parents, Walter and Helen. In the eyes of these retired wealthy business people, the fact that their daughter was unmarried and childless, regardless of her accomplishments, was seen as a failure. "Madison made the wiser choice," her father would often say. Her sister Madison had married Jake Harrison, a banker, immediately after graduating from college and became a full-time homemaker. Now she was pregnant with her first child. She had followed the ideal daughter path in the Winston family to perfection. As Evelyn drove, she felt painful memories from 2 years ago resurfacing. She too had had a chance at happiness. Her engagement to Noah Carter, a real estate developer, had finally pleased her parents. But suddenly, without explanation, Noah broke off the engagement. And strangely, a few months later, Madison had rushed into marriage with Jake. "Why do you always fail?" Her mother's words still echoed in her ears. "Learn from Madison. Everything she does works out well." Evelyn pulled over to the side of the road and rested her forehead against the steering wheel. Since childhood, she had desperately tried to live up to her family's expectations. As an honor student, as an athlete, and now as a businesswoman. But it was never enough. Madison received all their parents' affection without effort, while Evelyn was always pushed into the shadows. Her phone rang, displaying Madison's name on the screen. "Evelyn, where are you? It's about to start. I told you not to be late, didn't I?" Madison's voice was tinged with her usual sense of superiority. "I'll be there soon. Work ran a little long." "Always work. This is an important family day. Hurry up." After hanging up, Evelyn pulled back onto the road. However, when she turned onto the street near Madison's house, she witnessed an unexpected sight. At the entrance of a luxury hotel, Madison was embracing a man passionately. The man's back view was Noah Carter, her former fiancé. Evelyn stopped her car and watched the scene unfold. Noah gently embracing Madison's pregnant body. The two shared a long kiss before getting into separate cars. Madison drove toward her parents' home, while Noah headed in the opposite direction. With trembling hands gripping the steering wheel, everything suddenly clicked into place for Evelyn. The real reason Noah had broken off their engagement. Madison's hasty marriage. And now, the father of the baby Madison was carrying might be. "This can't be happening," Evelyn whispered. At that moment, another message arrived from Madison. "Hurry up. Everyone's waiting." Evelyn took a deep breath. She could feel a plan forming in her mind. She quickly opened her laptop and began searching through old emails and messages. There she found traces of exchanges between Noah and Madison dating back 2 years. Her hacking skills, a hobby from college days, were now proving useful. "I need evidence," she murmured calmly. She decided to delay her arrival at the baby shower. She needed time to organize the facts before her and gather necessary evidence. She picked up her phone and dialed. Diana Morrison Law Office, a composed female voice answered. I need your help with a very complicated family matter. On the other end of the line, Diana, a veteran family law attorney, nodded quietly. Tell me more. Evelyn began to tell the truth about years of family neglect, betrayal, and the shocking discovery she had just made. And about the justice she was seeking. I understand. I'll help you, Diana said. But we'll need solid evidence. Then I might be a little late for the baby shower, Evelyn replied. In her eyes burned a flame of determination that had been suppressed for a long time. As twilight approached, Evelyn arrived at her parents' mansion. Normally, she would park in the circular driveway in front of the entrance, but today she parked a little distance away. Gathering evidence had taken time, and she was more than an hour late. Madison's baby shower would already be in full swing. Evelyn got out of her car and took a deep breath. The crisp autumn breeze caressed her cheeks. Stay calm, she told herself as she took out a small compact mirror from her bag to check her makeup. It was perfect. At least her appearance was. She walked slowly forward. Her parents' house was one of the most impressive buildings in the area. White columns and expansive gardens, with large double doors at the entrance. As a child, this house had felt like a castle to her, but now it felt like a prison. As she approached the entrance, she could hear laughter and conversation drifting from inside. Evelyn was about to place her hand on the doorknob when she froze at the words she heard. She still hasn't come, it was her mother Helen's voice. Always using work as an excuse. She really doesn't understand the meaning of family. Well, that's just like Evelyn, her father Walter answered with a laugh. Never showing up when it matters most. Her priorities are always skewed. Evelyn stood motionless. Her hand on the doorknob began to tremble. This situation wasn't new. It wasn't the first time her parents had criticized her behind her back, but today, here, on this special day of Madison's baby shower. That useless girl, of course she's late, her mother's voice echoed again. A worthless, loveless, defective loser. Pain shot through Evelyn's chest. Defective. That was the word her mother used when referring to her. Since childhood, she had always been treated as a child who was lacking something, who couldn't meet expectations. The next moment, her heart nearly stopped. A toast. Madison's voice rose. To my beloved family and friends. Especially to my parents, who have been perfect role models for me. And I know you'll shower the same love on my daughter who will be born soon. The sound of glasses clinking and applause followed. By the way, Madison continued, where's my chronically late sister? Laughter filled the room. Don't expect her, her mother answered. She'll probably use some work emergency as an excuse again. But the truth is, she doesn't belong here. She's always the odd one out. Oh, a woman's voice said. But I heard she's very successful. An executive at that marketing company, right? Successful? Her father scoffed. Maybe on paper. But she has no family. No husband. No children. What kind of success is that? That's right, Madison's voice resonated again. Evelyn could imagine her sister raising a wine glass, though it must be non-alcoholic given her pregnancy. Well, she doesn't even have a man, and she can't have children anyway. Evelyn's hand slipped from the doorknob. She knew that was a lie. Medically, she was perfectly capable of having children. But Madison had always spread rumors that Evelyn is infertile. Even her parents believed it. Laughter filled the room again. But she doesn't deserve a real family anyway, Madison added. I thought she would come, another woman's voice. You sent her an invitation, didn't you? As a formality, Madison answered. But I didn't really think she would come. She's always too absorbed in herself. Remember a few years ago when she was engaged to Noah? She ruined everything, didn't she? The moment Noah's name was mentioned, anger surged through Evelyn's entire body. She trembled at Madison's audacity. "Oh, stop that," her mother said, but her voice was mixed with laughter. "Evelyn would be hurt if she heard that." "But it's true," Madison objected. "She let a wonderful man get away, and now she's alone. I have Jake and this beautiful baby. We'll be the perfect family." Evelyn closed her eyes. She breathed deeply and slowly. The feeling of loneliness and alienation from her family that she had felt since childhood washed over her. But now, it was transforming into a different emotion. Anger. Determination. And most importantly, a sense of liberation. "They are not my family," she whispered to herself. "And today, I'll prove it." Evelyn quietly backed away. Her movements were as graceful as a cat's, and no one noticed her. She descended the stairs carefully, making sure her shadow didn't fall anywhere visible. When she returned to her car, a folder of evidence sat on the passenger seat. Evidence of Madison and Noah's affair. Emails, photos, hotel receipts. And most shocking were the text messages she had hacked from Madison's phone. In them, the two discussed the possibility that Noah was the father of the baby. Evelyn opened the folder and rechecked the contents. Then, with a determined expression, she took out her phone and dialed Diana's number. "It's Evelyn," her voice was surprisingly calm. "It's time to put our plan into action. They should pay the price." Indeed, the lawyer's voice was cool and professional. "With this evidence, your case is strong enough. Especially considering Jake's position." "Good," Evelyn said. "He's a victim. He has the right to know the truth." "Let's discuss the next steps," Diana said. "What do you want from them?" Evelyn thought for a moment, then looked at herself in the rearview mirror with determination. "This isn't just about revenge, Diana," she said. "It's about justice. The truth needs to be revealed. I don't want to hurt them the way they hurt me. I just want them to understand the consequences of their actions." "I understand," Diana said. "Let's finalize the details at my office tomorrow. Get some rest tonight." After hanging up, Evelyn gazed at the house. Once the core of her identity. But now, she finally understood the truth. Family wasn't just about blood ties, but about respecting and supporting each other. And her family, her real family, wasn't here. Evelyn started the engine and quietly drove away. Her heart was filled with sadness and determination, but there was a new strength in her eyes. It was time to reveal the truth. The living room of the Winston mansion was enveloped in an unprecedented tension. 3 days later, a family meeting had been called at Evelyn's request. Soft light streaming through the heavy curtains illuminated antique furniture and paintings that had been passed down for generations. Family photos adorned the walls. In all of them, Madison was always at the center, while Evelyn was positioned at the edge. Walter and Helen sat quietly on the living room sofa. Across from them, Madison and Jake sat side by side. Jake anxiously crossed and uncrossed his legs, while Madison sat with her arms folded, looking disgruntled. Evelyn sat in an armchair, with Diana Morrison standing a short distance away from her. "Why did you bring a lawyer?" Walter asked. His voice lacked its usual authoritative tone and was tinged with anxiety. Evelyn smiled. It was a calm, calculated smile. "Because what we're going to discuss today involves legal matters, Dad." Helen nervously twisted her ring. "Legal matters? What are you talking about?" Before we begin, Evelyn stood up and connected her laptop to the television monitor placed in one corner of the living room. "I'd like you to see some slides." "Slides?" Madison snorted. "This isn't a work presentation." "No, it's not work," Evelyn replied calmly. This is a family matter. Particularly one that concerns you, Madison. The atmosphere in the room became increasingly tense. Jake stared at Madison, and she returned a contemptuous look at Evelyn. However, behind her eyes, a hint of anxiety lurked. Evelyn, what are you? Helen began to speak, but her voice broke off as Evelyn turned on the monitor. These are email exchanges between Madison and Noah from 2 years ago, when Noah and I were engaged, Evelyn explained as emails appeared on the screen. The dates, senders, recipients, and content were clearly displayed. In the subsequent emails, the growing intimacy between the two became apparent. This must be a forgery. Madison cried out. Her face had turned pale. A forgery? Evelyn calmly replied. Then how do you explain this? She advanced to the next slide, displaying hotel receipts. Multiple dates, Noah's name, room numbers. And security camera photos showing Noah and Madison embracing in a hotel elevator. The dates were from the period when Evelyn and Noah were engaged. This is. Walter was speechless. Helen covered her mouth with her hand, trembling in shock. Jake slowly rose from the sofa. Madison, is this true? His voice was low and dangerously quiet. Madison burst into tears. This has nothing to do with you. It's in the past. The past? Evelyn advanced to the next slide. Then can you explain this? This slide showed a picture dated 3 days earlier, capturing Madison and Noah embracing. It was from the day of the baby shower. You spied on me. Madison accused fiercely. That's illegal. Photography in a public place is legal, Diana spoke for the first time. And all this evidence was obtained legally. Jake covered his face with trembling hands. What does this mean? Madison. The room was enveloped in a frozen silence. Feeling all eyes on her, Evelyn moved to the final slide. And most importantly, she said calmly, there's a high probability that the father of Madison's baby is not Jake, but Noah. Madison screamed. That's a lie. Evelyn displayed text messages hacked from Madison's phone. They contained discussions between Madison and Noah about the baby's paternity. I've already initiated the process to legally confirm this, Evelyn pulled out DNA test petition documents. The court has already approved it. Jake exhaled violently and moved away from Madison. You traitor. Tears of anger welled in his eyes. Jake, that's not true. Madison tried to grab his arm, but he shook her off. Don't touch me. Jake shouted. You've been deceiving me for 2 years. I loved Noah. Madison suddenly cried out. Tears were streaming from her eyes. He chose me over you. The entire room froze. Madison's confession hit everyone like a bomb. Helen let out a small cry, and Walter stared at his daughter in shock. Chose? Evelyn calmly asked. So he broke off our engagement for you? Madison wiped her tears and defiantly raised her chin. Yes. He realized I was better, much better than you. Yet he didn't marry you, Evelyn pointed out. Instead, he had you marry Jake. He had no intention of making you his wife. The blood drained from Madison's face. He needed time. Until his company stabilized. I trusted you. Jake shouted again. Was our entire marriage a lie? And this child? He choked on his words, pointing at Madison's swollen belly. Jake, please. Madison pleaded. We're family. It's over, Jake said quietly. Then he turned and left the room. The sound of the heavy door closing broke the silence. Madison. Helen finally spoke. Her voice was trembling. How could you? Madison's words trailed off. Suddenly, she glared at Evelyn. Are you satisfied? Ruining my life. Evelyn quietly stood up. I only revealed the truth. You stole my fiancé, laughed behind my back, and continued to deceive Jake. He had the right to know. Get out. Madison screamed. Everyone get out. Evelyn nodded quietly to Diana, and the two left the room. Behind them, they could hear Madison's sobs and Helen's comforting words. Walking down the vast hallway, Evelyn searched for Jake. She found him sitting on a bench in front of the pond in the garden. His shoulders were slumped, and he was holding his head in his hands. Jake, Evelyn called softly. He looked up. His eyes were red, and his face was streaked with tears. Why did you tell me? He asked. We're not even close. Evelyn slowly sat down on the bench. For justice. And because you had the right to know. 2 years. Jake murmured. My marriage was a lie. And that child too. The DNA test will confirm it, Evelyn said. Even if it is Noah's child, you have options. Diana specializes in family law. She can help you. Why would they do this? Jake looked up at the sky. Madison and Noah. They followed their desires, Evelyn answered. And they didn't care about hurting others. The two sat quietly. The evening light turned the surface of the pond golden. What will you do now? Evelyn asked. Jake sighed. I don't know. But, thank you for telling me the truth. As painful as it is, it's better than living in a lie. Evelyn stood up and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call. As she was walking away, Jake stopped her. Evelyn, you're a strong person. Not the type they make you out to be. Evelyn smiled. It was her first genuine smile of the day. Thank you, Jake. As she made her way back to her car through the garden, she felt the weight on her heart lighten a little. Truth sometimes brings pain, but it's also the beginning of healing. A week had passed. Evelyn was immersed in a new project at her Manhattan office. Outside the window, early summer rain was tapping against the high-rise windows. The rhythmic sound helped organize her thoughts. Phone call for you, her secretary's message came through the intercom. Who is it? Evelyn asked without taking her eyes off the documents in front of her. Mr. Jake Harrison. Evelyn raised her eyebrows in surprise. A call from Jake was unexpected. Please put him through. Evelyn, Jake's voice conveyed his tension even over the phone. Thank you for taking my call. You're welcome. Evelyn turned her chair to look at the rainy view outside her window. Is something wrong? There's something I want to talk about, he fumbled for words. Could we meet? 2 hours later, Evelyn entered a small cafe in Midtown. Beyond the raindrops sliding down the glass windows, people hurried by on the street. Jake sat alone at a table in the back of the cafe. He looked thinner than before, and there were signs of fatigue under his eyes. Jake, Evelyn greeted him quietly as she sat across from him. Thank you for coming, he forced a smile. I ordered coffee. That's fine, Evelyn placed her bag beside her chair. So, what did you want to talk about? Jake was silent for a while, but eventually spoke as if having made up his mind. I've started divorce proceedings. I've hired a lawyer. I see, Evelyn nodded quietly. This was an expected development. But I think I need an experienced lawyer, he continued, choosing his words carefully. Especially considering the upcoming DNA test and custody issues. Evelyn understood. You want me to introduce you to Diana? If you don't mind, he said hopefully. Of course, Evelyn said. She's the best family law attorney. I'll send you her contact information. Thank you, Jake sighed deeply. And, there's one more thing I want to say. He nervously turned his coffee cup. I want to thank you. Thank you for telling me the truth. It was a wake-up call. I didn't want to build a family on such lies. Evelyn didn't know what to say. She was aware that her actions were partly motivated by a desire for revenge. But that wasn't all. I wanted to do the right thing, she answered honestly. Outside the cafe, the rain was beginning to let up. How is your family doing? Evelyn asked hesitantly. She hadn't been in contact with her parents or sister since revealing the truth. Jake gave a bitter smile. In a state of division. Your parents seem to continue supporting Madison. She's been staying at your parents' house. But, they seem to be attempting to reconcile with you too, Jake said. I heard from Helen. She said, Evelyn is also our precious daughter. Evelyn smiled sarcastically. Only when it's convenient for them. Madison. Jake chose his words. She says she's planning to be with Noah. But it seems Noah is beginning to renege on his promises to her. I'm not surprised, Evelyn said. She knew Noah's character well. It's strange, Jake shook his head. I wonder what I've been seeing all this time. I'm ashamed that I didn't realize their true nature. Don't blame yourself, Evelyn said gently. Love can sometimes make us blind. The conversation gradually shifted to more personal topics. Jake's work, Evelyn's career. For the first time, they had the opportunity to truly get to know each other. Actually, Jake said somewhat embarrassedly. Before marrying Madison, I was attracted to you. Evelyn stared at him in surprise. Really? Yes, he smiled. But Madison aggressively pursued me, she seemed more accessible. You were always shining so brightly, seemed unapproachable. Evelyn was speechless. She had always thought of herself as a shadow-like figure in her family. But perhaps she appeared differently in the eyes of others. Their conversation continued, and outside the cafe, dusk was approaching. Suddenly, Evelyn's phone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw it was a call from her parents. It's my parents, she said in a surprised voice. After a week of silence. You should answer it, Jake said. Evelyn hesitantly picked up the phone. Her mother's voice was urgent. Come to the hospital immediately. Madison has. Evelyn's blood ran cold. What happened to Madison? She attempted suicide. Her mother's voice broke with tears. Please, come. Evelyn hung up and looked at Jake with a pale face. Madison attempted suicide. Jake's expression changed too. Despite his anger towards his ex-wife, concern showed in his eyes. Which hospital? St. Luke's, Evelyn stood up. I have to go. I'll come with you, Jake said. I have my car. When they arrived at the hospital, her parents were standing in the hallway. Her mother was sobbing, and her father looked dazed. As Evelyn approached, her mother suddenly embraced her. Evelyn, you came. Why is he here? Her father coldly asked, looking at Jake. I invited him, Evelyn said quietly. How is Madison? She's stable, a doctor appeared in the hallway and said. Fortunately, she was discovered early. And the baby is fine. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. May I see her? Evelyn asked. The doctor nodded. For a short time. Evelyn entered the hospital room alone. Madison, lying in the white hospital bed, looked frail beyond anything Evelyn could have imagined from her usually confident sister. An 4 was connected to her arm, and a monitor quietly displayed her heartbeat. Evelyn. Madison called out in a weak voice. You came. Yes, Evelyn sat down beside her bed. Why did you do this? Tears spilled from Madison's eyes. Noah, he left me. With another woman. She broke down crying. I'm sorry, it was all my fault. Evelyn was torn by complex emotions. Anger, sadness, and strangely, compassion. Madison had always hurt her, but at this moment, she was just a wounded sister. It will take time for me to forgive you, Evelyn said honestly. But, you are my sister. Madison weakly squeezed her hand. I'm really sorry. Evelyn squeezed back. She wasn't sure if this was the first step toward reconciliation or the beginning of a new betrayal. But in this moment, she felt pity rather than hatred. Leaving the hospital room, Evelyn's eyes met Jake's in the hallway. His gaze held understanding and support. She smiled weakly. Life moves in unexpected directions, she thought. Christmas, 1 year later. The Winston mansion was wrapped in warm light. The large Christmas tree in the living room was decorated with colorful ornaments, and a fire quietly burned in the fireplace. Evelyn stood with a glass of wine, gazing at the snowy landscape outside the window. Her life had changed dramatically over the past year. She had been promoted to head of the marketing department and now had her own team. She had finally found a place where she could be herself, surrounded by people who understood her value. What are you thinking about? A gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. Turning around, she saw Jake standing there, holding a baby. Little Olivia Harrison, Madison's daughter, was now 6 months old. She slept happily in Jake's arms. Just reflecting, Evelyn smiled. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined us gathering like this. Jake stood beside her and lightly kissed her shoulder. Life is unpredictable. In the end, DNA testing confirmed that Olivia was Noah's child. Noah was legally required to pay child support, but he made no attempt to fulfill any further role as a father. His life had been on a downward spiral. Abandoned by his new woman, his real estate business failing. Rumors even suggested he was under investigation for fraud. Madison had lost her former arrogance and was struggling to raise her child alone while receiving psychological counseling. Her relationship with Evelyn was gradually being repaired. They were still far from a relationship of complete trust, but at least they were no longer adversaries. Oh, you too, Helen called out as she entered the living room. Dinner is ready. The parents had changed too. Knowing the truth and acknowledging their mistakes, they had amended their attitude toward Evelyn. It was sometimes unnatural and awkward, but Evelyn could tell they were making an effort in their own way. I'm the most surprised, Madison said as they sat down at the table. Her expression was softer than before. I was truly foolish. I was jealous of your success. But now. She gazed at Olivia. Now I want to be strong for her. Evelyn gently squeezed Madison's hand. She had learned that forgiveness is cultivated gradually, through small daily actions. After dinner, Evelyn and Jake sat on the sofa in front of the fireplace, holding hands. Their relationship had developed from a friendship that began with healing common wounds into a deep bond. You gave me the courage to face the truth, Jake said quietly. And you taught me what a real family is. Evelyn smiled as she gazed at Olivia sleeping in his arms. I finally understand what a real family is. It's not about blood ties, but being bound by respect, truth, and love. Outside the window, the snow continued to fall quietly. Having overcome the pain of the past, Evelyn had finally found a family, in the true sense of the word. The house stood quietly in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. It was a 2-story home with a small white fence and a distinctive blue door. Melissa Clark sipped her coffee while looking out the kitchen window. She was a woman with chestnut hair that fell to her shoulders, and kind eyes that showed signs of fatigue. "Amy, breakfast is ready." In response to her voice, the sound of small footsteps came down the stairs. Melissa's daughter, Amy, was in 3rd grade. She was a child with adorable freckles and large eyes full of curiosity. "Good morning, Mom." Amy sat at the table and her eyes lit up at the pancakes Melissa had prepared. Having been a single mother for 6 years, Melissa had struggled to balance her work as a psychological counselor with raising her child. Even so, she treasured her days with Amy more than anything. In another part of Portland's suburbs lived Melissa's parents, Judith and Howard. Judith was a former high school teacher who now spent her retirement doing volunteer work in the community. Howard ran a real estate company and was still active in his career. They were contrasting in both appearance and personality. Judith always sought perfection, was sociable and energetic. Howard, on the other hand, was gentle and rather reserved. "Melissa called," Judith said while preparing tea in the kitchen. "We're invited to Amy's birthday party." "Is that so?" Howard replied, looking up from his newspaper. "You're going, right?" "Of course," Judith said, though she appeared somewhat reluctant. "But Carol had invited me to brunch that day." Melissa's sister Carol lived about 15 minutes from their parents' house with her husband Mark and their 8-year-old son Jake. Carol, who worked as a hairdresser, was always bright and cheerful, and was her parents' favorite, especially her mother's. "Why don't you go to both?" Howard offered a practical solution. "I suppose," Judith answered, though she clearly had no intention of adjusting her schedule. Melissa had complicated feelings about her parents' relationship with her and her sister, especially between her mother and sister. Since childhood, Carol had been the special one in the family. Talented, sociable, the child who met their parents' expectations. Melissa, meanwhile, had always been somewhat in the shadows. It deeply saddened her to see the same thing happening with her own child. As Amy's birthday approached, Melissa gathered her courage and called her mother. "Mom, will you come to Amy's birthday celebration?" "Yes, of course," Judith's voice was cheerful. "Is there anything I should prepare?" "No, just your presence is enough," Melissa felt relieved. Amy is really looking forward to it. After hanging up, Melissa approached Amy in the living room. "Amy, Grandma and Grandpa are coming for your birthday." "Really?" Amy's face brightened, and she jumped up with joy. "Yay! Grandma's coming, it's been so long." Seeing her excitement, Melissa felt a pang in her heart. Amy had been longing for time with Judith this much. Indeed, Judith rarely attended Amy's school events. She often declined, saying she was busy. Yet, she always participated in Jake's events. Every time photos of her cheering for Jake at Sports Day were posted on social media, Melissa's heart ached. Nevertheless, Melissa always maintained a smile in front of Amy. "Grandma is busy," she would excuse, trying to protect Amy's sensitive heart. "I might make something for Grandma," Amy said, her eyes sparkling. "That's lovely. Grandma will surely be delighted." Melissa gently stroked Amy's head, praying that her mother would keep her promise this time. Amy's 10th birthday. She wanted it to be a special day. A few days later, as soon as Amy returned from school, she began crafting. Gathering colored paper, markers, and photos, she started making something. "A secret present," she said, not even showing it to Melissa. Looking at her serious profile, Melissa was once again moved by her daughter's pure affection. Did Amy realize Judith's coldness? Or was she still pretending not to notice? Either way, Melissa was determined to make the birthday a wonderful day. On the morning of Amy's birthday, Portland's sky was unusually clear. Sunlight streaming through the windows brightened the living room, making the colorful balloons hanging from the ceiling sparkle. Melissa had been up early preparing. A banner reading, "Happy Birthday Amy," decorated the table, along with cute paper plates and napkins. While waiting for a special chocolate cake to finish baking in the kitchen, Melissa checked the time. It was already 10 o'clock. Her parents had promised to come at 11. "Can I get dressed now?" Amy's voice called from upstairs. "Of course. Try on your new dress." When Amy came down the stairs, Melissa caught her breath. Dressed in a pale pink dress, her daughter looked a bit more grown-up than usual. She had small flower-shaped hairpins in her hair and wore a light lip gloss that she normally didn't use. "How do I look?" "Pretty?" Amy asked nervously. "You look perfect, Amy. Just like a princess." Amy beamed at Melissa's words and twirled around. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, she exclaimed, "Oh, Grandma's present," and rushed back upstairs. She soon returned with a carefully wrapped square box in her hands. Melissa was surprised by how well it was wrapped. Amy must have practiced many times. She placed it in the center of the table. The attached card read, "To Grandma, from your loving granddaughter," in childish, round handwriting. "What's inside?" Melissa couldn't contain her curiosity. "It's a secret," Amy replied proudly. "But I worked really hard on it. I think Grandma will love it." Afterward, Amy sat in a chair by the window and began watching the street, looking for her grandparents' car. Melissa took the cake out of the oven and started decorating it. As she carefully placed 10 candles, she looked at her daughter's expectant profile and felt a small anxiety in her heart. 11 o'clock came, but there was no sign of Judith and Howard. As time passed, Melissa could see Amy's shoulders gradually drooping. "Grandma and Grandpa are late, aren't they?" Amy said, looking up from the window. "Yes, they might be caught in traffic." Melissa tried to sound cheerful, but her voice trembled slightly. By noon, there was still no word. Amy repeatedly asked, "When are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" and each time, Melissa answered, "Soon." However, anger was beginning to grow in her heart. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa picked up her mobile phone and dialed her mother's number. After several rings, the call finally connected. The first sound she heard were waves and cheerful laughter. "Hello?" Judith's voice came through. In the background, children's excited voices could be heard. "Mom? Where are you?" Melissa asked quietly, but with tension in her voice. "Oh, Melissa. I'm a bit busy right now. Can I call you back later?" "Amy's birthday party has already started," Melissa said through clenched teeth. "We're waiting for you." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Then, Judith's light laughter came through. "Oh my, was that today? I completely forgot." Anger spread through Melissa's chest. Since she had the phone on speaker, Judith's words echoed throughout the room. Amy sat frozen on the sofa, not moving. "We're in Hawaii," Judith continued cheerfully. "On a family trip with Carol, Mark, and Jake. We're having so much fun." Melissa held the phone with trembling hands, searching for words. "But you promised." Amy was looking forward to it. "I'm sorry, but Jake really wanted to go to Hawaii." Judith's voice showed no sign of remorse. "I'm spending wonderful time with my darling grandson." At those words, Amy's expression changed. As if struck by someone, the color drained from her face. Her small body began to tremble slightly, and tears fell from her large eyes. "Why do you leave only me behind?" Amy's voice was shaking. "Am I not family to Grandma?" To that question, Judith on the other end of the phone could not answer. Instead, Jake's voice was heard in the background. "Grandma, hurry. I can see dolphins." Melissa pulled her daughter's shoulder closer with a hand trembling with sadness and anger. Amy's small body shook with sobs. Then, Melissa quietly hung up the phone. Amy, listen. Melissa knelt in front of her daughter and placed her hands on her tear-stained cheeks. You are my treasure. The most precious person in this world. Even if Grandma doesn't understand, I know how special you are. Amy remained silent, just burying her face in Melissa's chest and continuing to cry. Each time her small shoulders shook, Melissa's heart was torn with pain. The present for her grandmother placed on the table. That photo album, made over weeks, had now become a symbol of Amy's wounded heart. That night, after putting Amy to bed, Melissa returned to the living room. There were still traces of tears on her sleeping daughter's face. She picked up her mobile phone and looked at the pictures from today's events, the room decorated with balloons, the homemade cake, and Amy in her grief. Unable to sleep due to anger and sadness, she made a decision. She decided to post the photos along with the content of the phone conversation on social media. Today was my daughter's 10th birthday, she typed. Her grandmother said she forgot while traveling with another grandchild. My daughter asked, "Am I not family?" Before pressing the post button, Melissa hesitated for a moment. But remembering her daughter's hurt expression, she strengthened her resolve. This wasn't just venting anger. It was a quiet protest against the unfair treatment that had gone on for too long. When she pressed the post button, she felt a little lighter. Tomorrow, she would have to show a smile again for Amy's sake. But just for tonight, she wanted someone to hear this sadness and anger. Under the blue sky and sea of Hawaii, Judith sat on the beach with her grandson Jake. They were collecting seashells and building a small sand castle. Judith tried to savor the perfection of this moment as she watched Jake's smile. However, somewhere in the corner of her mind, there was a sense of discomfort. She hadn't completely forgotten about Amy's birthday. Rather, she might have consciously set it aside. Grandma, look. Jake proudly held up a star-shaped shell he had found. That's lovely, Jake, Judith smiled, but somehow felt a heaviness in her chest. That evening, when she checked her mobile phone in the hotel room, Judith noticed a strange message from a friend. It was from Rose, a church companion. Judy, are you okay? Did something happen? I saw on social media. Judith frowned. What was she talking about? Scrolling through her smartphone, she found several other similar messages. I'll check it later, she told herself, putting down the phone. She decided to enjoy the final day of the family vacation. The morning after returning to Portland, Judith headed to the community center for her usual volunteer activities. For years, she had been hosting a book club and cooking classes for seniors. When she entered the center, her usual companions were gathered, but as soon as she entered the room, the conversation stopped. Good morning, everyone, Judith greeted cheerfully, but the response was cold. During the book club, the looks directed at her were different. Judgmental, sometimes pitying looks. At lunch, friends who normally sat with her chose a different table. What happened? Judith asked Barbara, a longtime friend, as she was leaving. Barbara bit her lip uncomfortably. Everyone knows about the social media thing. It's not like you to discriminate between grandchildren. What are you talking about? Judith was genuinely confused. Melissa's post. About Amy's birthday. Upon returning home, Judith quickly opened her computer and logged into her social media account. There, she found Melissa's post. A room decorated with balloons. A homemade cake. And what pierced her heart most was the photo of Amy in tears. Beside it were the details of their phone conversation. Her words, "I forgot." Her description of Jake as her darling grandson. And Amy's heart-wrenching question, "Am I not family?" The post already had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. Judith covered her mouth with a trembling hand as she stared at the screen. This was the cause of her social isolation. She took a deep breath and called her husband. "Howard, look at this," she pointed to the computer screen. Howard read the post in silence, his face changing. "What have you done?" His voice was low, containing controlled anger. "To forget Amy's birthday." "I didn't forget," Judith protested weakly. "I just what?" There was a deep disappointment in Howard's eyes. "Not valuing family. I'm ashamed too." Judith tried to make excuses, but couldn't find the words. Her phone rang, and looking at the screen, she saw it was from her sister Carol. "Carol, what is it?" Judith answered the phone. "I saw the post." Carol's voice was tense. "I had no idea Amy was so hurt. We invited you to Hawaii, but I should have mentioned it was Amy's birthday." "You knew too?" Judith gasped. "Of course. She always calls with a reminder a week before her birthday. I heard it too." With these words, something inside Judith crumbled. She hadn't really forgotten. She had known somewhere in her heart. "What should I do?" Judith asked in a trembling voice. "Apologize first," Carol said sternly. "And Mark and I had noticed that you prioritized Jake over Amy. That's not right." After hanging up, Judith stood by the window, vaguely gazing at the scenery outside. For years, she had unconsciously discriminated against Amy. Why? Disappointment that Melissa had become a single mother at a young age? Or a preference for Carol's perfect family? The following Sunday, further shock awaited her at church. During the social time after the service, people who normally gathered around her were clearly keeping their distance. No one approached her. "Everyone saw the post," Judith whispered to her husband. "Yes," Howard answered briefly. He, too, was deeply hurt by his wife's actions. Upon returning home, Judith collapsed onto the living room sofa. The sense that her social standing, respect, and position in the community, things she had cherished, had crumbled overnight. Friends avoided her, her husband was disappointed, and even Carol was critical. However, what hurt most was Amy's face. That small, wounded expression wouldn't leave her mind. The question, "Am I not family to Grandma?" pierced her heart. Judith began to understand the gravity of her actions. There had been a serious problem in how she showed affection to her granddaughter. Melissa's post wasn't just venting anger, but a protest against years of unequal treatment. The next day, Judith spoke to her husband Howard. "I'm going to apologize to Melissa and Amy." Howard nodded silently. "That's the right decision. Will you come with me?" Judith asked anxiously. "No," Howard's voice was quiet but firm. "This is something you should do alone. If both of us go, it might overwhelm Amy. You should talk one-on-one first." Judith agreed with her husband's words. She went shopping and chose a birthday present for Amy. She considered expensive dolls and games, but ultimately chose a special locket where they could put their pictures together. Inside was engraved, "Always in my heart." "This isn't enough," Judith murmured, and made a reservation at a photo studio. For a special photo shoot with Amy. "If she forgives me," she wished. Upon returning home, Judith stood in front of the mirror, facing herself. A tired face, eyes filled with sadness and regret. And determination. She took a deep breath and set Melissa's home address in her navigation. "All I can do is apologize honestly and show through my future actions." As she drove, Judith hoped that today would be a new beginning. Even if Amy and Melissa wouldn't forgive her immediately, she wouldn't give up. She didn't mind how long it would take to repair the family bonds. Parking in front of Melissa's house, Judith sat there for a few minutes. A house with a small white fence and a blue door. She had visited a few times, but always for short periods. She took a deep breath, grabbed her handbag and the gift bag, and got out of the car. The few steps to the front door felt like a mile. pressing the doorbell with trembling fingers. The sensation of her chest tightening with tension. The door opened, and Melissa appeared. Her expression was cold and hard, her eyes showed signs of fatigue. "Melissa, I want to talk," Judith said in a small voice. "What do you want now?" Melissa's voice mixed anger and hurt emotions. "I came to apologize. Would you let me see Amy too?" A moment of silence. Various emotions could be seen crossing in Melissa's eyes. Anger, hurt, and also a small hint of hope. She stepped back and widened the door. "Come in." There was no warmth in those words, but at least there was no rejection. Entering the living room, Amy was reading a book. When she looked up and saw her grandmother, her expression froze. She slowly closed the book and placed it on her lap. Judith tried to smile, but her words stuck in her throat at her granddaughter's cold gaze. The air in the room was heavy and tense. Melissa stood at the boundary between the kitchen and living room, arms crossed. She seemed to be watching every word, every movement. Judith approached Amy and held out the gift bag. "Happy birthday, I'm sorry I'm late." Amy didn't move. She wouldn't even make eye contact. "You don't have to accept it," Melissa said quietly. "Grandma just wants to talk, right?" Melissa's calm voice hit a blade of sarcasm. Judith placed the present on the coffee table and sat down on the edge of the sofa. "I'm truly sorry. To forget your birthday." "You didn't forget, did you?" Melissa's voice cut sharply. "I heard from Carol. When I called with a reminder, you were listening. You knew, and you ignored it." Judith was at a loss for words. She couldn't lie. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "Why?" Melissa's voice was trembling. "Why only Amy? Everyone started avoiding me." Judith began. "I saw the post on social media. I truly acted shamefully. You're just scared of how others see you." Melissa's voice was as cold as ice. "Are you really thinking about your granddaughter's feelings?" Judith tried to make excuses but swallowed her words when she saw the anger burning in Melissa's eyes. Melissa's voice began to rise. "It's always the same. You always prioritize my sister and Jake, putting me and Amy second. Not just this time. You never came to Amy's school performances or sports days, but you always went to Jake's. Why? Aren't we family?" Emotions suppressed for years poured out like a flood. Melissa's voice trembled with anger and sadness. Amy quietly began to cry, wiping her eyes with her small fists. "Amy." Judith reached out to her granddaughter, but Amy pulled away. Melissa went to a closet and took out a box. She placed it on the coffee table. "Look at this." Melissa's voice was a bit calmer, but still full of emotion. Judith nervously opened the box. Inside was a handmade photo album. "Memories with Grandma" was written on the cover. As she turned the pages with trembling hands, she saw the few photos of her and Amy pasted inside. A distant shot from a sports day, a cutout from a family Christmas photo. And in places without photos, Amy had carefully drawn pictures. Images of grandmother and granddaughter. Walking hand in hand in the park, baking cookies together, imaginary scenes of things that had never actually happened, depicting Amy's wishes. "Amy spent 3 weeks making this," Melissa's voice echoed quietly. "Every day saying, I wonder if Grandma will like it." On the last page was written, "I love you, Grandma," in Amy's round handwriting. Seeing those words, tears overflowed from Judith's eyes. She sobbed, her voice choked. Judith said in a trembling voice. "I can't make excuses." "You're right." She turned towards Amy and slowly approached her. "Amy, Grandma did a terrible thing. I forgot your special birthday and hurt your heart. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I'll change from now on. You are my precious granddaughter." The room was wrapped in silence. Amy remained silent, staring at her grandmother. In her eyes was a mixture of confusion, sadness, and a small light that looked like hope. "Even if you say you'll change, how can we believe you?" Melissa asked. "After years of discriminatory treatment." "I understand," Judith answered honestly. "Words alone aren't enough. But I want to show it through my actions from now on. I'll attend all of Amy's school events. I'll regularly make time on weekends to spend with her. I want to be a real grandmother." "Mom, you always make promises like this." "This time is different," Judith looked at Melissa with serious eyes. "I will never make the same mistake again. I'll cherish my time with Carol and Jake, but I'll cherish my time with Amy just as much." After a long silence, Amy said in a small voice, "Do you really like me?" At that pure question, the hearts of the adults in the room were stirred. Judith nodded, tears flowing. "I love you. I'm truly sorry I couldn't express it well until now." She slowly approached Amy and knelt before her granddaughter. "Look at this locket," she took a small box from the gift bag. "We can put our pictures inside. So I can always be with you." Amy received the locket with small hands and stared at it intently. "Also, I've made a reservation at a photo studio for next Saturday. I want to take special pictures of you and me. So we can add more real memories to that album." A small smile appeared on Amy's face. It was weak, but it was a sign of hope. Melissa maintained her stern expression, arms still crossed. "Show it through actions, not just words. It will take time to trust again." "I understand." Judith stood up and looked straight into Melissa's eyes. "From now on, I'll try to become a true family in the real sense. I'll never leave anyone behind again." At those words, the tension in Melissa's face eased a little. She looked at her daughter and nodded slightly. Amy quietly stood up, took the album from the table, and offered it to her grandmother. "This is for you." Her voice was still hurt, but a seed of forgiveness was sprouting there. Judith received the album with both hands and held it to her chest. "Thank you, Amy. I'll treasure it." As she was leaving, Judith turned back. "Can I come pick you up next Saturday?" Amy looked up at Melissa, and seeing her mother nod slightly, answered, "Yes." Before the door closed, Judith said once more, "I promise. I'll definitely come." She returned to her car and rested her forehead on the steering wheel. After a long sigh, she lifted her face with a determined expression. This wasn't an end, but a new beginning. It would take time to regain trust, but she had the rest of her life. And above all, it was time worth spending to repair her relationship with her granddaughter. "Amy, wake up. It's a special day." Melissa's voice traveled up the stairs. The morning sun shone through the gaps in the curtains, tinting Amy's room golden. Amy sat up, rubbing her eyes. Her 11th birthday. By her pillow was a small present Melissa had left the night before. At that moment, the door opened, and Judith entered with Melissa. The grandmother, wearing an apron, held a plate with a small cupcake. A single candle was lit on top. "Happy birthday, Amy." Judith's smile was warm, and her eyes showed joy. "Grandma." Amy jumped up in surprise. "You're already here." "Since 6 this morning," Melissa explained with a laugh. "Grandma is baking a special birthday cake." Many things had changed in this past year. Since that day of confrontation, Judith had kept her promises. She devoted every Saturday to spending time with Amy and never missed a school event. What began as a formal relationship gradually transformed into a genuine bond. The photo studio shoots became a monthly event, and Amy's album was filled with real memories. Photos of grandmother and granddaughter smiling, a day at the zoo, failures in cooking class, making Christmas cookies. Judith was also gradually regaining social trust. Although friends initially kept their distance, they began to notice her change. Church companions also gradually reaccepted her. Most importantly, family relationships were being repaired. Her husband Howard was proud of his wife's efforts, and their relationship with Carol's family had returned to how it was before. Except now, there was an important difference: both grandchildren were treated equally. In the kitchen, a large chocolate cake awaited completion. "Happy Birthday, Amy" was written in pink icing, and 11 candles stood ready. The living room was decorated with balloons and streamers that Melissa and Judith had put up together the night before. After breakfast, Amy picked up her necklace. Hanging from her neck was a locket containing smiling photos of her and Judith. "Grandma, I'm wearing this today too." "I'm glad." Judith gently stroked her granddaughter's hair. That night, after returning home from the birthday party, Judith opened her diary. It was a habit she had continued daily since a year ago. Today was Amy's 11th birthday. "When I remember how much I hurt her last year, my chest still aches. The scars my insensitivity left on her heart won't easily disappear. But I can only fill them through my actions from now on. Karma. What you do always comes back to you. I never want to experience that loneliness and shame again. But without that, I might never have understood the true meaning of family or the value of my granddaughter." Judith put down her pen and looked out the window. It was a quiet night with twinkling stars. She touched the locket at her chest. Inside were photos of her and Amy. She wore the same one that Amy did. "Family bonds are not a given," she whispered quietly. "They must be nurtured and protected." She added to the last line of her diary. "Amy's smile is the most precious gift in my life." The sharp sound of Emily Johnson's fingers striking the keyboard broke the silence of the small apartment. 2 hours until the deadline. Client revision requests always came at the very last minute. Beside her, her son Jacob was deeply focused on a dinosaur puzzle. The careful way his thin fingers matched the pieces was like looking into a mirror of herself. "Mom, look. I finished the T-Rex's head." Emily took her eyes off the screen and gazed at her son's face, full of accomplishment. Jacob's brown eyes were just like hers. "That's wonderful. Just a bit more and it'll be complete," she smiled, momentarily forgetting the tension of her work. Just then, her smartphone rang. The screen displayed "Mom." Emily sighed and pressed the answer button. "Are you ready for tomorrow? Make sure you put sunscreen on Jacob. If he gets burned like last time, we'll have to take him to the dermatologist again." Carol's voice had that familiar bossy tone mixed in. "Of course I'm ready. I've packed almost everything," Emily answered with a slight frown. "Have you talked to Vanessa? She's preparing matching t-shirts for Ava and Lucas. They'll look good in photos." Emily closed her eyes. "Not yet. I'll contact her today." "Do that. Those children should become closer as cousins. Especially Jacob. I think it would do him good to spend time with more active children." Emily didn't miss the criticism hidden behind those words. Jacob was introverted, preferring to spend time alone or in small groups rather than large ones. To Carol, this seemed like a problem that needed fixing. "Jacob has his own pace, Mom," she answered in a gentle but firm voice. "Anyway, we're meeting at the hotel lobby at 8 a.m. tomorrow, right?" "That's right. Don't be late," Carol added before hanging up. Emily put down her phone and looked at Jacob. He was pretending not to have heard the conversation, but she could see the slight tension in his small shoulders. "Was Grandma worried about me again?" he asked quietly. Emily was sometimes surprised by her son's perceptiveness. "Grandma just makes it her job to worry about everyone," she explained gently. But don't worry. Tomorrow is going to be a fun day. She really hoped so. The family trip to Universal Studios had been planned months ago as a birthday present for Lucas. And at a bad time for Emily, an urgent conference call request had come in from an important client. Conducting business talk in the middle of Universal Studios was unavoidable. Emily's smartphone rang again. This time it was a message from her sister. "I'll stop by at 6. Lucas wants to see Jacob. Also, let's discuss tomorrow's schedule." Emily replied, "Okay. But I have an important conference call at 2 p.m. tomorrow. It might take about 30 minutes. A reply came immediately, "Don't worry. Mom and I will look after Jacob. You focus on your work." Emily felt grateful but anxious. Carol and Vanessa's idea of looking after usually included criticism of her parenting methods. "Jacob should be more sociable, he should do more physical activities, you're spoiling him too much." Ever since Emily became a single mother, their advice had been constant. She took a small cell phone from the drawer and checked that it was charged. This was Jacob's emergency phone. "Jay, we'll take this with us tomorrow. If anything happens, you can call Mom right away." Jacob nodded with a tense face. "Will I be with Grandma and Aunt Vanessa?" "Just for a little while. Mom will be back quickly." Emily hugged him. "Besides, Ava and Lucas will be there too." "Lucas always takes my toys," Jacob said in a quiet voice. Emily couldn't hide her wry smile. Vanessa prided herself on raising her children perfectly, but from her perspective, her nephew Lucas was simply spoiled. However, for the sake of family peace, she kept this to herself. The doorbell rang, and Emily checked the clock. It was exactly 6 o'clock. Vanessa's punctuality was sometimes convenient. When she opened the door, Vanessa stood there with a perfect blonde ponytail and designer activewear. Behind her, Ava and Lucas lined up wearing matching denim jackets. "Are you ready?" Vanessa's voice rang out brightly. "I can't wait for tomorrow." Emily opened the door wide to welcome her family. With mixed anxiety and anticipation for tomorrow, she prayed silently, "Please, let everything go well." The entrance to Universal Studios in the morning was crowded with weekend visitors. The sun was rising high, and the excited voices and laughter of children filled the air. Emily held Jacob's small hand firmly as she followed Carol and Vanessa's families. "Everyone, let's take a commemorative photo here," Vanessa announced loudly, taking out her smartphone. "Ava, Lucas, come here. Jacob too." As the 3 children lined up in front of the camera, Jacob looked up at Emily with a slightly nervous expression. She smiled encouragingly and gently pushed his shoulders. "Smile." After taking a series of photos, Vanessa checked the screen and nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect. I can make a great Instagram post." Emily looked at her watch. 10 a.m. 4 hours until the conference call. "Shall we head to the first attraction?" Carol unfolded the map and began directing the family. "Let's go to the popular attractions first. The wait times get longer in the afternoon." The group proceeded through the theme park and arrived at the first attraction. The wait time displayed was 45 minutes, but the children's excitement didn't wane. Jacob in particular had been looking forward to this attraction featuring his favorite anime characters for months. "Look, Mom," he pointed to pictures of characters drawn on the wall while standing in line. "They look so real." Emily felt warm inside seeing her son's joy. Usually quiet and introverted, Jacob's eyes were shining with pure excitement in this moment. After going on 2 attractions, the group entered lunchtime. While sitting at a restaurant in the park and placing their orders, Emily's smartphone vibrated. She checked the screen and frowned. "I got an email from the client. The conference call has been moved up to 1 o'clock." She looked at her watch. It's already 12:30. Don't worry, Carol waved her hand. We'll take care of Jacob. You focus on your work. That's right, Vanessa agreed. We were planning to go to Splash Mountain next anyway. Jacob, you'll have fun with Ava and Lucas. Emily looked anxiously at Jacob. Her son seemed concerned about her absence. Are you okay? She asked Jacob gently. It'll just be for a little while. I'll be back soon. Jacob nodded slowly. Come back quickly. Emily checked his pocket to make sure the emergency phone was there. With this, you can contact me anytime. Carol laughed lightly. Don't worry so much. We'll be watching him carefully. Emily took a deep breath. All right. I don't think it will take more than an hour. Let's decide where to meet. Let's meet at the exit of Splash Mountain, Vanessa suggested. We'll probably still be in line or just finishing the ride. Emily gave Jacob a final kiss and left the restaurant in search of a quiet place. Finding a spot with less noise, she opened her laptop and began preparing for the conference call. The meeting progressed as expected, and the client seemed satisfied with her design proposal. Emily focused, explained, and answered questions about the next steps. Looking at the clock, it was already 1:45. That concludes my explanation, she wrapped up politely. Do you have any questions? There were a few minutes of questions from the client, which she answered courteously. When the meeting ended, the clock showed 2 o'clock. Emily quickly closed her laptop and checked her smartphone. No notifications. Surely her family was at Splash Mountain as promised. As she began walking toward the attraction, her phone vibrated in her pocket. From an unknown number, no, she realized with a jump in her heart that it was Jacob's emergency phone. Jacob, she answered, anxiety bleeding into her voice. Mom. A small voice trembled. I'm alone. Emily stopped, feeling as if the world had frozen despite the noise around her. Where? She gasped. At the entrance to Universal Studios. Jacob's voice was on the verge of tears. Grandma left me. Alarms rang in Emily's head. Don't move, stay there. I'm coming right now. She hurried through the crowds toward the park entrance. At the same time, she called Carol. Mom. Where's Jacob? She demanded in a voice mixed with anger and fear. Oh, Emily, Carol's voice was far too calm. Jacob is enjoying Splash Mountain with Ava and Lucas. No. Emily shouted. He just called me. He's all alone at the park entrance. After a moment of silence, Carol answered in a confused voice. That can't be. I thought he was with Vanessa. Jacob wasn't with you? Emily's voice trembled. He didn't want to go on the attraction, so I left him with Vanessa. Carol's words trailed off. She wasn't with him either. Jacob is alone at the entrance. Emily felt uncontrollable anger. How could this happen? Don't make such a big deal, Carol said, mixing in a laugh. He'll be fine for a few hours. We'll find him soon. Emily hung up in disbelief and called Vanessa next. Emmy, I'm busy now. Lucas needs to go to the bathroom. Where is Jacob right now? Emily interrupted. Isn't he with Mom? Vanessa answered lightly. No. He's alone at the park entrance. What? Vanessa was confused for a moment, but quickly snorted. Well, my kids would never be left behind. I never take my eyes off them. Emily hung up and ran full speed toward the entrance. Pushing through the crowds, her heart was beating so fast it felt like it would jump out of her chest. When she finally saw the entrance gates, she spotted a small figure, Jacob sitting on a bench, hugging his knees and crying. Jacob, she cried out, rushing to her son. Jacob looked up, and seeing his mother, immediately stood up and jumped into her arms. "Mom," he clung to her, sobbing. Emily held him tightly, feeling tears stream down her cheeks. "It's okay, Mom is here now," she whispered. "I won't leave you alone again." Just then, she noticed a man in uniform approaching. "I'm Michael Foster, the security manager," the man introduced himself, extending his hand to Emily. His manner was professional yet warm. "One of our staff noticed your child crying and contacted me." Emily shook Michael's hand with a trembling hand while still embracing Jacob. "I'm Emily. I'm so sorry. My mother and sister." She stumbled over her words. The more she tried to explain, the more ridiculous the situation seemed. Michael nodded understandingly. "Let's move to a place where you can calm down." He took out a small radio and instructed, "Please prepare a VIP room." They were guided to a quiet room behind the scenes of the park. The room had comfortable sofas, cold drinks, and toys appropriate for Jacob's age. "Would you like some water?" Emily asked her son. Jacob nodded slightly and took a sip of water. His eyes were red and swollen, but he had stopped crying. Michael sat down on the sofa and gently asked, "Jacob, can you tell us what happened?" Jacob looked at Emily, and when she nodded encouragingly, he began speaking in a small voice. "I was with Grandma. But I didn't want to ride the big roller coaster. I was scared. And then..." Michael gently prompted. "Grandma said, 'Then wait here.' But Aunt Vanessa, Ava, and Lucas all went with her." He faltered. "I waited, but no one came back." Emily felt her chest tighten. "How long did you wait?" "I don't know, a long time." Jacob's voice grew smaller. "Lots of people walked by. I got scared. So I went to the entrance. Because I'd seen it before." Michael nodded with an understanding expression. "That was a very smart decision, Jacob. When you're lost in a crowded place, going to a prominent place or somewhere you've been before is the right thing to do." Emily gently stroked Jacob's head while explaining the situation to Michael. She told him about her work conference call, leaving her son with Carol and Vanessa, and receiving the frightening phone call. "My mother said, 'Don't make such a big deal,' and my sister." She tried to contain her anger. She said, "My kids would never be left behind." Michael's expression hardened. A child being alone in an amusement park is a very serious situation. Especially for a child of Jacob's age. "I know," Emily said apologetically. "I should have been more careful." "No, Ms. Johnson. You were responsible and gave your child an emergency phone. That's what ensured Jacob's safety today," Michael said reassuringly. "The problem lies with your family members who neglected to supervise Jacob." Emily took a deep breath. Finally, she felt she could stop blaming herself. Now, Michael stood up and smiled. "I'd like to make up for this unpleasant experience with something special." Jacob looked up with curiosity. "Let me treat you as VIPs today," Michael suggested. "How about a backstage tour, priority boarding on attractions, and special character greetings?" Jacob's eyes lit up. "Really?" Emily was filled with gratitude. "That's very kind of you. But special treatment isn't necessary." "No, we take pride in making our guests' experiences the best they can be," Michael smiled. "Especially for guests who have experienced situations like today's." About an hour later, Emily and Jacob were walking through the park's backstage with Michael as their guide. Jacob, with a special VIP badge on his chest, looked around excitedly. "This is an area regular guests can't see," Michael explained. "It's behind the scenes of the movies and attractions." They visited the character costume room and took photos with Jacob's favorite characters. Next, they enjoyed attractions through priority lanes that would normally require hours of waiting. Jacob's smile had returned, and he was once again an excited 6-year-old boy. Emily felt warm seeing her son's transformation and took out her smartphone to capture their special time in photos. "Mom, look." Jacob pointed to an attractions control room. Michael was explaining the control panel to him. "Amazing." Emily smiled and took a photo to capture the moment. Casually, she opened Instagram and scrolled through the recent photos. Then, impulsively, she began to post. She uploaded a photo of Jacob's beaming smile and VIP badge with the caption, "A tragedy of my son being left behind turned into a special memory." And she added a short explanation. "Today, my 6-year-old son was left alone at Universal Studios. The fear when he called me, crying, after being abandoned by family, is indescribable. However, thanks to this park's wonderful staff, especially security manager Michael Foster, the tragedy transformed into a magical experience. Sometimes, the worst situations become the best memories." She pressed the post button and returned the phone to her pocket. Over the next few hours, they enjoyed the park. Michael occasionally joined them, continuing to provide special experiences. Jacob forgot his fatigue and ran excitedly from attraction to attraction. Around 4 p.m., Emily's smartphone began to vibrate continuously. Notifications were pouring in. Her Instagram post was getting an unexpected response. Messages of concern from friends, support from strangers, and empathy from parents who had similar experiences were flooding in. But what surprised her most was that the post had been shared hundreds of times and was beginning to be picked up by local news sites. "What's wrong?" Michael asked, noticing the change in her expression. "My post seems to be spreading quite a bit," Emily answered in confusion. "That wasn't my intention." Michael nodded understandingly. Sometimes, people relate to real experiences. Especially when there's a good ending. As Emily was checking more notifications, a message arrived from Vanessa. "I saw your post. Delete it right now. Everyone is condemning us in the comments. Friends contacted me saying we abandoned a child. How could you do this?" Emily took a deep breath. And for the first time, she felt the strength to assert her position. "Where do you want to go next?" she asked her son with a smile. Jacob excitedly pointed to the next attraction. She ignored Vanessa's message and switched her smartphone to silent mode. Now was the time to enjoy moments with her son. She felt that Carol and Vanessa should take responsibility for their actions. Carol sat on a bench in the park, scrolling through her smartphone screen with trembling fingers. Social media feeds were overflowing with sympathetic comments on Emily's post. However, more than those comments, critical words directed at her jumped out at her. Next to her, Vanessa was nervously biting her nails while checking her own smartphone. "Even my PTA friends are talking about this," Vanessa's voice was filled with despair. "I can't show my face tomorrow." Carol looked up with tears in her eyes and said, "Try calling Emily again. Surely she'll listen." Vanessa had already called 3 times, but all were forwarded to Emily's voicemail. Vanessa sighed and hung up. "It's no use, Mom. She's ignoring us." "How could?" Carol held her head. "It was just 30 minutes. Just while we were riding Splash Mountain. He was scared, so I just thought he could wait." Vanessa said quietly, "We didn't confirm who was watching Jacob. Mom thought I was watching him, and I thought Mom was watching him. This is both our responsibility." Carol was unusually at a loss for words. She had always believed she was right, but this time there was no room for excuses. "We need to find Emily," she stood up. "I'll apologize directly." The two began walking through the park. Finding Emily and Jacob in the crowded masses was not easy. They looked at the map and moved from attraction to attraction. Vanessa suddenly stopped and pointed. the VIP entrance to the Minion attraction. Indeed, Emily and Jacob were entering through a special entrance with Universal Studios staff. Jacob was smiling, wearing a shining VIP badge on his chest. "Let's go." Carol hurriedly began walking in their direction. However, before they could approach, the attraction entrance closed. The two headed to the regular entrance and lined up, but the wait time display showed 40 minutes. "I can't wait this long," Vanessa was irritated. "Besides, I need to find Ava and Lucas." Carol turned around in surprise. "What do you mean? Where are they?" Vanessa's face turned red. "Well, while we were in line for the Speed Racer attraction, they said they wanted ice cream, so I gave them money and said, 'Come right back.'" "Vanessa!" Carol exclaimed. "You left the children too." "I didn't abandon them." Vanessa became defensive. "They're 8 and 5. The ice cream stand was right there, and I was going to come back right away." Carol sighed. "What time is it now?" 4:30. "It's been over an hour." The two exchanged glances, and the same terrible thought occurred to them. Immediately, they began running toward the ice cream stand. When they arrived, there was no sign of Ava or Lucas. Vanessa looked around, panic spreading across her face. "Ava! Lucas!" she began to shout. The stand's clerk noticed the two and asked, "Can I help you? Have you seen my children?" An 8-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Vanessa's voice was shaking. The clerk nodded as if remembering. "Yes, they were here about an hour ago. They bought ice cream and waited for a while. But when no one came to get them, a staff member took them to the Lost Children Center, I think." "Lost Children Center?" Carol and Vanessa exclaimed simultaneously. "It's in the center of the park," the clerk pointed to the map. "Your children should be there." The two hurried to the Lost Children Center. Along the way, Vanessa was acutely aware of the severity of her actions. She had always played the perfect mother, but today, she had committed the same mistake. When they arrived at the Lost Children Center, they explained the situation to the woman at the counter. The woman checked the computer and nodded. "Yes, Ava and Lucas Perry. They're here," she pointed to an inner room. "But please wait. The security manager wants to discuss the situation." "Security manager?" Vanessa was confused. A few minutes later, Michael Foster appeared. He gave Carol and Vanessa a stern look. "Ms. Perry, Ms. Williams, I'm Michael Foster, the security manager of this park," he introduced himself. "Today, we've had 2 serious incidents reported from your family." Vanessa stumbled over her words. Please let me see my children." "Of course. They are safe," Michael answered in a calm voice. However, leaving children alone in a theme park is a very dangerous act. Especially in the case of young children like Lucas. Carol opened her mouth but quickly closed it. She remembered her own words from a few hours ago, "Don't make such a big deal." "We are truly sorry," she said in a small voice. Michael nodded. "The children are spending time with staff in the play area. Before you go to see them, please come this way." He led the two to a monitor on the side. The screen showed Emily and Jacob enjoying a backstage tour. Jacob's face was overflowing with pure joy, and Emily was watching him lovingly. "We're providing Miss Johnson and Jacob with a special VIP experience," Michael explained. "We want them to create good memories after experiencing unnecessary trauma today." Carol and Vanessa silently stared at the screen. There was an image of Emily and Jacob they had never seen before, a mother and child completely happy in their own world. "Are they looking for us?" Vanessa asked in a small voice. Michael smiled gently. "No. They are enjoying this special time now." Carol said with tears in her eyes, "Emily is, a wonderful mother. I underestimated her. Vanessa nodded too. Her image of being a perfect mother had completely crumbled today. Shall we go see your children now? Michael urged the two. When they entered the play area, Ava and Lucas came running. Vanessa knelt and hugged them tightly. I'm sorry. Mommy was wrong, she said tearfully. Mom, where did you go? I was scared, Lucas said in a small voice. Ava looked at her mother from a slight distance. The park lady taught us that if we get lost, we should look for an adult or talk to someone in uniform. What happened to Jacob? Vanessa couldn't find words to answer her daughter's question. Carol intervened, explaining, Jacob is with his mom. We'll go see them later. Michael approached Carol and Vanessa and quietly said, Emily and Jacob will be waiting at the park exit at 6 o'clock. If you want to meet them, you should go there. The two expressed their gratitude and left the play area with the children. Mom, what should we do? Vanessa asked. Carol took a deep breath. We'll meet Emily and apologize sincerely. That's the only thing we can do. Vanessa nodded. She noticed for the first time today that her mother seemed so weak. And she had to admit that she herself was just as weak. The two held the children's hands and began walking toward the park exit. So when I put gummy bears on the pizza, Lucas frowned and said, yuck. Vanessa concluded her story with a laugh. Everyone around the table laughed. Emily's apartment dining table had become the place for weekly Sunday family gatherings since the incident at Universal Studios 3 months ago. Mom, can you tell me about that day? Jacob asked Emily. How did you meet Michael? Emily gently stroked her son's hair. Because you bravely called me. That day, Michael became everyone's hero. Carol smiled quietly while holding her coffee cup. Since she began counseling to repair her relationship with her grandson, she had gradually changed. There were no longer critical words, instead, support and affection characterized her attitude. Since then, Jacob has enjoyed going to the museum with me, Carol said gently. Last week, we saw a dinosaur exhibit. It was so much fun. Jacob's eyes sparkled. Grandma memorized all the dinosaur names. Emily was grateful for the new relationship with her mother. Carol no longer criticized her parenting, instead, she had come to recognize and respect her strength. Vanessa had also changed significantly. Shedding the mask of the perfect mother, she had become more honest and humble. Want to go to the PTA meeting together next week? Vanessa asked Emily. I'd like you to see my presentation on learning from parenting failures. Emily nodded happily. I'd love to. After the meal, as the children began playing games in the living room, the doorbell rang. When Emily opened it, Michael Foster stood there with a bouquet of flowers. Sorry I'm late, he smiled. Work ran long. Since that day, Michael had become part of Emily's life. What started as just friendship had gradually deepened, and now they were dating several times a week. Mom, Michael is here. Jacob came running and jumped into Michael's arms. He genuinely adored his hero. Hey, champion, Michael greeted Jacob with a high five. Emily felt her heart warm at this sight. She never imagined that the tragic event of that day would bring so many blessings. Family bonds had been repaired and grown even stronger. A year ago, she was a single mother, constantly criticized by her mother and sister. Now she was part of a family that respected and supported each other. Now, it's dessert time, she announced, bringing a chocolate cake from the kitchen. Let's toast to new beginnings. Glasses were raised, and the sound of them touching resonated in the room. Sometimes, the most unexpected events bring about the most needed changes. Emily had learned that. And her family had etched the same lesson in their hearts.